Good morning, everyone. This is June 21, 2024 at 9 a.m. This is the CBE meeting. I'd like to open up the meeting, call the meeting to order, and I'm going to go ahead and ask Devin to do a roll call vote.
Dr. Bolton,
Here.
Robert Brody,
Here.
Dr. Cow,
Here.
Alex Chan, Jim Efting,
I'm here.
Thank you.
I'm here.
Kareem Gangora,
Present.
Larry Kaplan,
Here.
Paul Kramer,
Here.
Alex Lawrence, Esther Lynn, Justice Macy Walla, Bethany Peak,
Here.
Ashley Silva Guzman, Judge Reyna,
Here.
Vince Reyes,
Here.
Alan Yokelson.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you so much, Devin. I'd like to get started by saying that as noted on the agenda for today's meeting, public comments during the meeting will be limited. Members of the public wishing to comment were encouraged to submit written comments prior to the meeting to ensure that the committee would have time to consider those comments. The committee has received and read all the written public comments. We thank you for that. Later in the agenda, the committee will consider 2 law school inspection reports. Law school representatives can provide public comment following staff presentation of the law school's inspection report. The law school representatives will have 5 minutes to speak at that time. Now, the chair or the committee coordinator will attempt to call members of the public in the order that they appear. To facilitate hearing as many members of the public as possible, I encourage you not to repeat points that were made by previous speakers and to allow the committee the time needed to deliberate on the important topics that we'll be discussing today. We will be limiting public comments to 3 minutes per person. For those of you who are participating via Zoom video, you should have a function for virtually raising your hand. It's a hand icon and it should appear at the bottom center of your screen. If you wish to make public comments, please click on that. For those of you who are participating by phone, you may virtually raise your hand by pressing *9. That's the star key, then the number 9. The coordinator will call members of the public in the order that they identify raised hands and will enable the microphones of the speakers. Are there any public members that wish to make comments? I'm going to turn it over to you, Devin.
We do not have any raised hands on Zoom. Are there any members of the public in the San Francisco office that wish to make public comment?
We have none.
Thank you. Any members in the LA office?
At the LA office, we have none.
We still do not have any members of the public that have raised their hand via Zoom to make public comment.
All right, thank you, Devin. Moving on to the open session.
Sorry, Dr. Cow. I think I see a raised hand now.
Oh, all right.
Just a little slow to raise the hand. I thought I saw one. Devin, did you?
I did. They just lowered their hand.
Okay.
And they're back. So our first public comment will be from Katrina.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, first of all, thank you for allowing me with the opportunity to speak today. My name is Ekaterini Karamshalidou. I'm a member of the State Bar, and I'm here to address an issue that is really close to my heart, which is a requirement for LLM students to complete 12 units to qualify for the bar exam. Is this a good time to address this topic?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So as an international LLM student who has myself navigated this process, I strongly believe that this requirement should be reconsidered and ultimately removed. First and foremost, it is well known that the nature of LLM programs in the country, combined with the bar exam preparation, already meets the requirement and ensures that students acquire the necessary knowledge and the skills to practice law effectively. So the bar exam itself has a very comprehensive and demanding program and is an assessment already capable for determining a candidate's legal acumen. So if a student can pass the bar exam, it should be sufficient proof of their competency, regardless of whether they have completed 12 specific units during the LLM program. Specifically, I do believe that the primary purpose of an LLM program is to provide the legal education and expertise that the applicant is looking for. And many international students like myself have come to this country to gain expertise in specific areas of law that are often not covered in those mandatory 12 units. So this requirement can often force students to take additional courses that may not align with their professional goals and their areas of interest in general. So I do believe that this 12-unit requirement can create significant financial and time burdens, and forcing students to enroll in additional courses solely to meet the bar eligibility requirements adds unnecessary financial strain and extends the time that it takes for a student to complete the program. So this is especially challenging for international students, as you understand, who often face higher tuition fees, living expenses. And I do think that the current course requirement makes it difficult for applicants attending out-of-state ABA accredited law schools to determine whether their curriculum covers these units. Personally, I attended an ABA accredited program in California. So the university I attended was very helpful in allowing me to evaluate which courses I need to take, but I do know that there are many students from other states that do not have this opportunity, unfortunately. So overall, and just to make sure that I make my point clear, I think that if a student can pass the bar exam, it should be sufficient proof of their competency, regardless of whether they have attended those units. So removing this requirement would not lower the standards of our legal profession. So yes, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Our next public comment will be from Ray Hayden.
I just want to make sure that, number one, you can hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. The other question I have is my things for the Committee of Bar Examiners on the Kaplan situation. Is this the appropriate time to make a comment here on that?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Before I found out about the NCBE jumping on Kaplan about the issue with the MCQ exam potential, I had already submitted my information today for the public comments. One of the things I issued was a PDF file. I don't know if that got in there or not, but those are a document that I make up. It's a 36-page tool to help people with the essays, which would hopefully be going away at some point. Now, here's the thing I want to talk about on that. In June of 2023, CalBar contacted me and asked me to contact CalBar about my suggestions for the bar exam. And my suggestion was drop the essays. They're ridiculous, number one. Number two, you can get everything done with the MCQs. The medical community does. Step 1, Step 2 CK, and Step 3, a 2-day multiple choice exam. And the Federal Aviation Administration use multiple choice questions. And I can tell you, as a professional drone pilot, I've yet to crash into anything because I follow the safety rules drilled into our skull by the FAA. Their exam that I have to take every 2 years requires 100% perfection to pass. But I believe the written exam part of it is no longer required, but it's highly suggested that we do that. And it still requires 100% to pass. I just passed it in May of this year. I just passed it again. So the medical community has a 90% percentage of people passing their exams. They're multiple choice. These are the people who stab and poke and cut us apart and everything else. They can do it on multiple choice. The FAA, and I practiced some of the STEP exam questions. If it was to be a semi-open book, they give you a picture or they give you a chart or a graph or some statistics or whatever that you need to review to answer the question. That is a kind of a hybrid open book opportunity. Now, here's the thing I said back in June of 2023, though, is make a multiple choice exam. There's no problem with the subjective grading. You've eliminated that. You've got a 100% objective exam, but instead of the MBE, which is indeed, I guarantee you, is an objective exam. There's only one right answer and one that could be right. I've done all 810 in the most recent ones, and it's true. The fact of the matter is they're done in an unfair and just a basically dishonest, horrible human way of doing things. But if you do it honestly, openly, fairly, okay, you can give me 1,000 MCQs over the course of a week. Let's go. But that's the thing is, with the Kaplan thing, that's the NCB attacking Kaplan. But I told CalBar how to make their own multiple choice questions.
Thank you for your public comment.
4 months. Okay. Contact me. I'm free to talk about it. Bye.
Thank you. Our next public comment is from Carrie.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I am making a comment or more of a question inquiry about the status of the Blue Ribbon Commission recommendations to the California Supreme Court. It seems to have been put at their feet and it's just sitting there. And for some of us older, you know, I'm in my 50s and I'm studying for the bar exam and I work a full-time job and have a family. And the toll that this is taking on my mental health is bad. You know, spending months and months completely sedentary, you know, and isolated is, it's not proper. This test should not, sorry, but it was pretty much made clear during the Blue Ribbon Commission meetings, which I watched most of them, that the bar exam as it stands right now is not really a good measure of minimum competence. And that is, it went where? Where did that go? It's sitting at the feet of the California Supreme Court. When can we actually get some changes, some real changes? You know, I was there during the pandemic when the bar exam went online, and that added a whole lot of other stressors to taking a test in, you know, months after you were supposed to take it in the first place. So, you know, my question to the examiners is, what's the status? Can we please get some action? Thank you.
Thank you. We do not have any additional public comment.
Thank you so much, Devin. Moving on to our next agenda item, which is approval of the April 19th, 2024 Committee of Bar Examiners public meeting minutes. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? If there are none, I'd like to call for a motion for approval.
This is Robbie. I'll move to approve the minutes from the April meeting.
Thank you, Robbie. Is there a second?
Alex, second.
Oh, thank you, Alex. Thank you for the second. So is there any discussion or edits or debate about our minutes from April from anyone? Seeing none, with a first by Robbie and a second by Alex Chan. Devin, can you do a roll call vote?
Dr. Bolton?
Yeah.
Robert Brody?
Yes.
Alex Chan?
Yes.
Jim Efting?
Yes.
Kareem Gangora?
Yes.
Larry Kaplan?
Yes.
Paul Kramer?
Yes.
Alex Lawrence? Esther Lynn? Justice Misiwala? Bethany Peak?
I'm going to abstain.
Ashley Silva Guzman? Judge Reyna?
Yes.
Vince Reyes?
Yes.
Ellen Yokelson?
Yes.
Dr. Cow?
Yes.
With 11 yeses and 0 nos, the motion passes.
Okay, thank you, Devin. Moving on to our next agenda item, which is Committee of Bar Examiners Work Plan. We asked the staff to provide an update on the work plan, and it was attached for today's meeting. If the directors of each area could please provide a short oral update, we would welcome that. Amy, could you go ahead and start with the work plan?
Sure. So as you can see, the work plan has been attached. I'm going to highlight the areas that have either we have made some progress or have changed since the last meeting. And under the exam areas and examinations unit, one change is as noted, that's noted on the work plan, is the standard setting study that's scheduled for August 2024. So as you may recall, when we transitioned, the committee voted for an all multiple choice exam for the first year law student exam. One of the next steps after the exam administration is to revisit the cut score. The standard cut setting study will help us achieve that. So to accomplish that, we're going to work with a panel of faculty that are familiar with preparing people after their first year law student to look at the grading that happened with this next administration. That analysis, again, will help establish a range. That range of cut score for the first year law student exam will come to the committee in August to finalize what the standard score should be for the first year law student exam. So again, that's scheduled for August 2024. And also under the operations and management, we also have one update. The Supreme Court report for February 2024 will come to the committee in August. And that's a comprehensive report that includes our statistics, the sample questions, and then also our report on the grading administration. And that's all I have under those two areas.
Are there any questions for Amy on what she reported from any of our members? And then who would be next?
Sure, I'm happy to go next. Devin, we can just go in order through our educational standards section. Well, we made some progress and completed a few of these tasks. I'm just going to go top to bottom here. One of our priorities in the educational standards space was to pursue mandatory accreditation and or initiatives to improve outcomes for unaccredited law schools. This effort, I think, initially began in January as a discussion in context with the law school profile report. And then the second component of this initiative to improve outcomes, I think, was further discussed at the April committee meeting, where the committee took action directing staff to explore 4 options that could improve performance at these unaccredited law schools. So I think the change to both the deadline component of this is that mandatory accreditation likely further requires further discussion. But those 4 initiatives, the initiatives to improve outcomes, have been essentially folded into the next priority, which is the review of the unaccredited law school rules. And we'll have more to share about that today. So as far as deadlines are concerned, mandatory accreditation, again, likely requires further discussion. So as far as that moving forward to a board committee, we have that as TBD. But those initiatives to improve outcomes, we would be, at least for now, aiming for recommendations to go to the board March of 2025. Devin, if you can just scroll down just a little bit, that would require action by the committee in either October or December of 2024. Similarly, the review of the unaccredited law school rules, we will be providing an update at today's meeting that shares a similar timeline. We would be aiming for a recommendation to go to the board in March, which would require some action by the committee in October or December. Okay, if we can move forward, thank you. As I mentioned, in January, the committee did review the law school profile report, as well as an update to the law school performance report. So that task has been marked as completed. We'll actually be sharing later today an update to the law school performance report, reviewing 2023 data as well. Okay, let's keep moving forward. I'll skip our ongoing tasks, but looking at evaluating the CBE's role in non-JD programs, we discussed that in March 2024. We communicated to the committee possible amendments to statute that would clarify the committee's role in overseeing non-JD programs at non-law schools. That was completed. The committee's effort was completed in March, and the board incorporated those amendments in their legislative proposal, which has not yet been completed, but that effort is ongoing. And then looking forward to the future, the Board of Trustees directed staff and the committee to explore requirements for California accredited law schools to require courses regarding the competent use of generative AI and other regulations or rules related to the bar exam and generative AI. This is something that we'll be pursuing, I think, closer to the end of this year, December of 2024. Other than that, I think we have a host of typical ongoing tasks: maintaining and enhancing engagement in law schools, petitions for and registration for accreditation. We have an update related to jointly accredited status to share later today. And at the next meeting, August 2024, we'll have minimum cumulative 5-year, the NPR pass rates for each law school. Okay, that's my update. Thank you, Devin.
Are there any questions for Cody from any of our members? Okay, seeing or hearing none. Who would present next, Amy?
I believe that's Tara.
Tara, okay.
Good morning. Thanks, Devin. So for the operations section, our priorities that I'm just going to briefly go over are the rules updates and where we are. So the State Bar has hired the rules attorney. So as you see, the moral character rules are back from public comment and they are on the agenda for today. If all goes well, then those will be going to the board in July. And Devin, can you scroll to page 7, please? We are also picking up the multi-jurisdictional practice and the foreign legal consultant rules. Those, again, were ones that had previously come to the board, but they were paused before, they'd come to the committee, but were paused before they went to the board. So we're looking at some of the things we've learned through the process, as well as working with the rules attorney. And we'll bring those back to the committee, hopefully in August or October, so that way they can go forward to the board in November. And then down to page 8, please. And then the practical training of law student and the law office study rules, those will hopefully be on the same timeline as the special admissions rules. Some of this will be a little bit fluid based on the rules attorney's availability, but staff is going to work closely with that person to hopefully get these moving. And then if you scroll up just a little bit, Devin. Thank you. And then the eligibility rules are last one. So those, as you may recall, were there's quite a lot there. So those will be the last ones that we'll pick up with, hopefully either December this year or January, coming back to the committee. So that way they can make it to the board in March again.
General question. A lot of our rule projects have been paused of late due to the need to hire an attorney who was going to focus on drafting of rules. Am I correct in understanding that that person has been hired and so the pause is over?
Correct. And so that's, now we're just trying to work with this person so that way, since they're working with the whole State Bar, not just admissions, to kind of slot in the admissions rules as he can work on them with us.
Okay, and as we have discussions, from working groups, preparing packages for presentation to us, will that attorney be available to the group, or will their advice just be filtered through the other staff to us? I think what I'm getting to is I think it would be more useful, to me at least, if I could speak directly to that person at times.
We can definitely request it. We haven't gotten that far in the planning process, but we'll see if he can join us when we do have those meetings.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from our members for Tara? All right, seeing none. Anyone else?
That's it.
Okay. That concludes our report for the work plan. And then moving on to our chair's report. The only update I have beyond which has already been agendized today is to make committee members aware that the May meeting of the Board of Trustees, Brandon Stallings, the board chair, directed staff to research protest activity and how that has been handled in the moral character process. Historically, I mean, staff is reaching out to other jurisdictions, the NCBE, the ABA, to have a joint conversation about how participation in protests at both the undergraduate and law school institutions, and more broadly, does or does it not have an impact on moral character. Part of the board chair, Brandon's direction, was to involve members of the Committee of Bar Examiners. And I anticipate an update on this research at the next CBE meeting in August. Couple housekeeping tips for today.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
What does that mean, protests? You mean like all the protests like with the Palestine, Israel stuff?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
And that comes from the Board of Trustees. So some housekeeping tips, notes for today. We do have a special set presentation today at 11 a.m. We will then, after a brief lunch, go into closed session. And then we anticipate we'll come back at 12:30. Then we'll return open. We will return to open shortly thereafter with examinations. Examination items on the California bar exam. So that concludes remarks from the chair. Moving on to our next agenda item, which is the consent agenda. That is the report of administrative updates regarding law schools. The consent calendar is voted on and approved as an omnibus item, meaning one vote for the entire calendar unless a board member decides to pull something off the consent calendar. So I'd like to see, is there anyone that would like to pull any items off the consent calendar from our members? If not, I'd like to go ahead and get a motion.
This is Robbie. I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Thank you, Robbie. May I have a second?
This is Bethany. Second.
Thank you, Bethany, for the second. Is there any discussion or debate about the consent agenda for today? Seeing and hearing none. Devin, may we go ahead and get a roll call vote?
Dr. Bolton,
Yes.
Robert Brody,
Yes.
Alex Chan,
Yes.
Jim Efting,
Yes.
Kareem Gangora,
Yes.
Larry Kaplan,
Yes.
Paul Kramer,
Yes.
Alex Lawrence, Esther Lynn, Justice Macy Walla, Bethany Peak,
Yes.
Ashley Silva Guzman, Judge Reyna,
Yes.
Vince Reyes,
Yes.
Alan Yokelson,
Yes.
Dr. Cow.
Yes.
With 12 yeses and 0 nos, the motion passes.
Thank you, Devin. That concludes the consent agenda. We'll be moving on to our next agenda item, which is under operations and management. For section A, like I said, that this is a special set for 11 a.m. So we will be going on to then section B, which is the action on proposed revisions to the guidelines for foreign educated general applicants with a first degree in law. I'll turn it over to Christina.
Hi, thank you, everyone. So you heard a public comment earlier on this topic. The proposal before you is a revision to the guidelines for foreign educated applicants seeking eligibility to sit for the California bar exam. The suggested revision removes a requirement for applicants who hold a first degree in law and a master's in law and LLM from an ABA approved or a CBE accredited law school. The existing requirement mandates that the LLM courses of study must include 12 semester units covering at least 4 different subjects tested on the bar exam. This requirement has been identified as a barrier, particularly for the applicants from out-of-state ABA accredited law schools, making it difficult for both applicants and staff to verify if particular courses meet the necessary criteria. I am going to share my PowerPoint. I put together a slide just because it's a lot of information. Everyone can see my PowerPoint slide? So essentially the process now for applicants that receive their foreign education abroad is that everyone needs to have an evaluation out of one of our credential agencies. And the evaluation must certify that the applicant has a first degree in law that's substantially equivalent to a JD, or that it meets the educational requirement for admission to practice law in their foreign state or country. And then they're required to do additional legal study here in the US. They can either be awarded an LLM, a Master's of Law, or they can successfully complete 20 units. The proposed change that we are suggesting is that the applicants with an LLM is to remove the specific requirement of 12 semester units covering the 4 bar exam tested subjects. Instead, the recommendation suggests that obtaining an LLM, which is already requires substantial legal education, that should suffice for eligibility to sit for the bar exam. However, the requirement to complete a course in professional responsibility would still remain. And then, of course, if they do not get their LLM, the applicant does not get their LLM, and they complete 20 units, then those 20 units must still be in the 4 bar exam tested subjects, one of which is professional responsibility. Robbie or Ashley, did you want to add anything to the overview?
Yes, hi, this is Robbie. I believe that Ashley is starting her very first jury trial today, and she's not here, but we both spent quite some time with Christina and with Tara on this, and I appreciate very much the staff looking. So CBE members and the public, one thing I like about kind of the direction that the CBE is taking is the bar is looking at older requirements to see if they are in line with the current needs of the bar and the public that we protect. So this is a slight tweaking of our requirement for foreign applicants. And to be clear, these are applicants who have gone to law school in another country and have graduated and have gotten a special certification that their law school experience is roughly equivalent to one here in the United States. So they've already have that barrier or that requirement to meet. The additional requirement posed by the California State Bar is that you do additional study here in the US. And we've kind of made it a little easier to meet that requirement by saying you must get an LLM, and if you do get an LLM, you can take classes in a variety of subjects. It was too hard for us to match up our bar named subjects with LLM subjects offered. So I think that this slight tweaking still maintains the public protection that is so important to us, in this case, for foreign applicants, for foreign study applicants, while maintaining a connection to California law. So Ashley and I support this move by the bar. I think it's going to be helpful for interested applicants, and it's going to be helpful for members of the public that will have this kind of attorney to look to. I think that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Robbie. I see Alex has his hand up.
Thanks, Robbie. This is really good. stuff that you guys are doing. One question, how do we come up with 20 units as opposed to something more, something less? What's the formula behind that?
That is a good question, Alex. I am looking at anybody else here. 20 units was what the guidelines previously stated. We didn't change the 20 units, but I don't know how long the guidelines have been around, at least since 2013. Does anybody else have?
I think it's because an LLM is usually 1 year. So law school courses are between 2 and 4 units. So it's to make up a year of coursework.
Is that,
yeah, so
I don't have the rule in front of me, but is that also in the bar rule right now?
I didn't hear that last part. Christina, did you hear that?
Is it in the bar?
The bar rules.
Sorry, I've been on mute. Yes, the 1 year is in the rules, but then the guidelines further describe what that year will look like.
Yeah, so we'd have to change the rules to change the 20 at this point.
Right, and those will be part of the eligibility package once those do come back, but then that package is much larger. That's one that'll come back towards the end of the year, beginning of next year.
I think typically law school, most of the courses are 3 units. The major key core courses are 4 units. But if you're allowing applicants to take, a variety of courses, really we're looking at maybe between 5 to 6 courses, and that will at least take, more or less 1 year, another additional year to complete those 20 units. Is that accurate, Robbie?
Yes, I would say the idea is a year of study here in the US after completing that law program in another country that's been certified.
Do we know in the practical sense when an applicant, gets the LLM, what schools would give them that opportunity? Whew, I hear a lot of echo. What schools would give them?
Hold on one second, Alex. It's because of the public. We have a public member that's joined us, and they need to turn off their sound or something. Just give me 1 second, Alex. Is it okay? Amy, as usual, has solved all problems. So, Alex, that program's everywhere. And Natalie, we have talked about this before, that these LLM programs are sometimes, lawyer related and sometimes not, but the subjects are similar and overlap. So, Alex, that program's everywhere.
Got it. And do we know in the most practical sense what schools would allow LLM students to do an additional year of courses?
Well, my understanding is that all of the programs permit this kind of study.
Got it. So there are no extra hurdles where they have to overcome in order to get one school to let them take additional units beyond LLM programs. Is that accurate?
Well, the classes that are included are within the LLM program. So I think, Christina, it's fair to say historically, we're talking about 9 or 10 applicants per year. They go ahead and obtain the LLM degree, and then once they've completed that, sit for the bar. So they've got a JD that we recognize from another country and an LLM here in California. Would you agree, Christina? I mean, just looking at the numbers, that's what I saw.
Yeah, but I think to answer Alex's specific question, I don't know the answer, but anecdotally, I can tell you that I believe some schools will restrict you to take just a course here, They either want you in the full LLM program or taking those 20 units. So to ask an applicant to come back to take just, 4 additional semester units or 1 more class, that could be more difficult.
Yeah, and I think you're sort of hitting the nail on the head, Christina. That is really my concern. A lot of times when applicants take their LLM courses, law schools actually have a specific set for those LLM students. And so they can't just take all the courses that are required to sit for eligibility and not the courses that are necessary for the LLM programs. And so the only remedy there is to take all of those courses, that is LLM courses and those that we require them to take. And I think that's what the commenter sort of but the sense that I got from the commenter is this extra burden, financial and time wise, that that would be borne by those applicants. And so I'm just wondering, one, what's the formula? That's the reason why I'm asking the question that I asked earlier. What's the formula behind the 20 units, and whether there's any way, shape, or form we can either, one, minimize that burden, or two, give them an alternative means to, give them what they need to be eligible to sit for the bar.
If I maybe can clarify a little bit, Alex, I think when the commenter was speaking, they were more talking about the current guidelines, because in their current form, the guidelines require, even if you get the LLM, that they complete the 12 of the 20 units are in 4 of the bar exam tested subjects. Whereas with the revision, we're trying to do away with the 12 unit 4 subject requirement. It's just LLM and the professional responsibility course, which from what we've seen, there's always a professional responsibility course in the LLM programs. That's not one that they've struggled to get. It's some of the other subjects. So in this matter, it would actually be, I think, going towards what the commenter had said.
I see. Thank you, Tara. I don't know what to do without you. No, thank you for the clarification. Then in that case, it sounds like there's an easier path forward for those applicants and not a harder path. So as always,
we're trying to remove a barrier. I'm sure a lot of LLM programs are specialty programs. So for that person's career with the first degree in law, they'd rather do a specialty LLM and taxation or, another specialty area. But our requirements now make them do something more general.
But I agree, Brody, to your point, that this does simplify the path. It doesn't eliminate it. And I'm still for not eliminating this rule entirely. I think that a foreign study applicant should take classes in subjects here. And that's the requirement. I think that the commenter wanted to completely eliminate that requirement if I got what she was saying, and just be able to take the bar exam. And this is not that. This is an easier path, but it doesn't eliminate the requirement that there be some study of subjects here in California. And I think that's a good thing.
Great minds think alike. That's why we're twins. You have exactly what I have in mind. I do think some requirements should be there, especially when you're coming from a foreign country where you really don't know what we test you on. And so it's just getting the exposure, or by having some mandatory courses, I think that will give that, or at least help them get their feet wet and know exactly what we do. But good stuff. As always, you do a wonderful job on this. So thank you.
Yeah,
Kramer, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I'm having trouble reconciling the idea that we have decided that their foreign degree is equivalent to an American JD, and the current way I understand, because we're saying that they need to refresh themselves on the bar topics. The proposal would say, I guess, that just going through another year of law school in the U.S. will some way socialize them into our ways and mores enough that they'll be improved as lawyers. Of course, they still have to pass the bar exam. So then, if you accept that premise, why do we care what extra classes they take when they don't obtain an LLM? That's one question. Another is, we're in a non-LLM pathway, we're still talking about 12 units in the now 3 subject areas as opposed to 4 in the old scheme. But we're also mandating professional responsibility. So should we maybe take the 12 units down to 10 or something, or 9, recognizing that that we're in effect asking for roughly 3 units by the mandatory professional responsibility requirement? Then a couple of just drafting questions. Should there be an or between paragraphs B and C? In other words, is it supposed to be you qualified by one of those 3, A, B, or C methods? I think the word or may be missing. And then paragraphs D1 and D2, I'm guessing those are meant to apply to all of the provisions in this guideline, not just paragraph D. So I would recommend relabeling them E and F so that they do that, so that they have the same dignity as A, B, and C. And then I'd like an explanation about why the effective date is being backdated. What's the rationale for that?
I think we can try to capture this. Please let us know if we missed something. I think the intent with the 12 units for B, for those who don't get the degree, is that the 12 units covered the 3 courses and the professional responsibility, not that just the 3 courses were to equal 12.
Not the way it's written.
I'm sorry?
That's not the way it's written.
Well, it says comprised of 3 semester units, or 12 semester units comprised of 3 separate courses and 1 course on professional responsibility. So we do have the Word doc up if you'd like to adjust that, but that was the intention.
Okay, let me look again. I've been having trouble accessing my files from here. Okay.
We can put it up too in a minute, but you want to go through the other answers, Tara?
And then C is not meant to be, or C is in addition to, and so this is why, so they need to meet either A or B. So either get the LLM degree or the 20 units with these other requirements. And then both A and B must be completed within the 36 months. And this came from the revised rules for eligibility that the working group had worked on, that the committee had approved going to public comment back in October. But again, those are on pause. But since we're updating the guidelines, we folded that in. In D previously existed, and I apologize. You were saying changing 1 and 2 to E and F. Is that what the suggestion was, or?
Yeah, do those apply? They don't seem to be a subset of D. They seem to be separate concepts that should have equal dignity with the other paragraphs.
Okay, Audrey, I don't know if you have any feedback from when this was brought in 2021. I didn't on that part.
Okay, I can look at them.
There, I can just. You see the Word doc?
Yes.
I mean, suggestion seems fine to me. I just don't know if there was another intention when it was drafted this way initially.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. That's fine. We'll get the formatting done later. Okay. And did you have a suggestion then for B, Paul?
Let's see, I would just say make D1 E, and then D2 F.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't relate to the grandfathering of pre-2021 courses. That is what D speaks to.
Okay, so that's done. And then I think the last question was about the effective date of March 1st. So that is when the exam opened for this July exam. So the thought was for those applicants who were found ineligible for this exam under the prior eligibility guidelines, if they would like to still sit for this exam, we will give them that opportunity versus only making it effective going forward.
Right, but what do 1 and 2 have to do with that? They seem to apply generally to.
No, I'm sorry. I was just talking about generally you said the effective date at the bottom of the document. I thought the March 1st date.
And why again?
That's when the application opened for this July exam. So for those applicants that were found ineligible pursuant to the old guidelines, if the committee does decide to approve these guidelines, we would give those folks the opportunity if they would like to still sit for this exam, as long as they meet the requirements under the new guideline.
we're making an eligibility change when we're still making people eligible for the July bar exam. So in fairness, we want to put it back to March 1st when the exam opened.
Yeah, all right, I understand your argument. So do you agree then that D1 and D2 should be renumbered?
Yes, and I made that change on the screen.
Okay, and the reason my comment about C was because I guess I was looking at an earlier paragraph in the red line copy that seemed to have a different version of C. So
Or I'm sorry, are you talking about the one above? Because there's two C's. The one regarding the law school council.
yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, maybe that's kind of confusing. That's
yes, you're right there. That's
should be or. Okay.
Thank you. I thought you were referring to the second one.
So that's a drafting pointer for the future. Maybe we don't have two separate sets of paragraphs with the same lettering scheme and without you know, say like a 1 or a 2 to distinguish them 1A versus 2A. Okay, but that's for the future. That's what
we could add a 1 or a 2 here. We kept the same format as we do have, but I think that would be, I mean, that's not.
Don't worry about it, but it makes it hard to talk about it. Harder, that is. And let me see if let's see if you covered everything. Oh, the first 2 paragraphs of the introduction do not form a complete sentence. And with that, that's the extent of my comments.
Do you have a suggested change, or we can remove the introduction? We just added it to try to make it clear where these guidelines were coming from.
So what does well, maybe you could excerpt more from the rules. Anyway, it may not bother anyone else. There's a lot of that in our work, but my eyes are just very good at seeing that sort of thing.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Are there any other questions or comments for Tara or the Christina from our committee members? I don't see any other raised hands. Paul, your hand is still raised. Were you meaning to speak more, or I just want to make sure. Okay, thank you, Paul. So that is the proposal. I'd like to call for a motion.
So this is Robbie, because I worked on this with Tara and Christina, and thanks everybody for the comments. I'm going to move to approve the staff recommendation to modify to approve the revision to our guidelines for foreign educated applicants.
Is there a second? Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Alex, for seconding the motion. The motion is up on the screen. Do we need to read that motion, Amy, or can everyone see it?
Yeah, can everybody see that? Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay, so if everyone can see the motion, I'm going to go ahead and ask Devin to do a roll call vote.
Dr. Bolton,
Yes.
Robert Brody,
Yes.
Alex Chan,
Yes.
Jim Efting,
Yes.
Kareem Gangora,
Yes.
Larry Kaplan,
Yes.
Paul Kramer,
Yes.
Alex Lawrence, Esther Lynn, Justice Macy Walla, Bethany Peak,
Yes.
Ashley Silva Guzman, Judge Reyna,
Yes.
Vince Reyes,
Yes.
Alan Yokelson,
Yes.
Dr. Cow.
Yes.
With 12 yeses and 0 nos, the motion passes.
All right, thank you, everyone. Moving on to our next agenda item 4, under examinations, the update on the 2025 California bar examinations. I would turn it over to Audrey.
I will turn it actually over to Ed Standards. I think as we talked about at the top of the meeting, we're going to take that after lunch.
Yes, thank you for that reminder, Audrey. So we will then go on to educational standards. Who should I turn that over to? Natalie?
Yes, Paul, would you like to do an intro before I begin the items?
No, I'll chime in as I need to.
Okay, thank you. The first item we'll be discussing relates to Abraham Lincoln University School of Law. This is a registered, unaccredited distance law school located in Glendale. It has been operated for many years by a family owned by the parents, and the law school seeks 2 requests. The first is to transfer full ownership of the law school to Dean Park, the daughter and the family, and also to move their location from their current location in an office park in Glendale to another nearby office park. It will be a 2-suite facility. They are a distance law school. They do not require any visits from any of the students to complete the JD program, but choosing this particular location will give them 2 offices, one with a view and conference space and access to conference rooms not only in Glendale, but around the state of California. So this appears to be adequate space for their staff, which works largely remotely, but gets together occasionally, and for the occasional opportunity when students would like to meet with someone in person. Dean Park has been the dean of the law school for over 10 years, and she has also been the vice president of the university at large. The parents' intention would be to transfer the entire university to Dean Park, but the request before the committee, it involves only the law school because the jurisdiction of the committee involves the law school. They have correctly contacted BEPI and also the Distance Education Accrediting Commission regarding the remainder of the university. We also have Dean Park available today to make a public comment, and if we could recognize her, I would appreciate it. Welcome, Dean Park. You have the floor for 5 minutes of public comment.
Thank you very much. Thank you to staff and the committee for this opportunity to make a public comment. Natalie, thank you for just that introduction. So I will keep my comment short. As she introduced, I'm Dean Jessica Park of Abraham Lincoln University, and I'm happy to offer a quick high-level summary just of certain details. So ALU offers a 100% online JD program to its students, and it is registered in the unaccredited distance learning category with the Committee of Bar Examiners. And it's due to that registration, ALU has its basis for authority to award the JD degree to its graduates. ALU also is an institutional accredited with the Distance Education Accrediting Commission with the law school within the institution. And ALU in February 2024 received notification of its renewal of its accreditation for 5 years. ALU has been planning this future change in location after just the natural expiration of a 5-year lease. And as part of its exploration, we prioritize finding optimal options for staff, faculty, and students while keeping open options to extend the current lease as needed for pre-approval. We are very happy to identify a new office only 0.6 miles away that permits 2 private offices and a co-working space and more amenities to staff, faculty, and students. We do have a fully online program, and staff have worked remotely, but how our current location is staffed is staff does come in, and it is a location where staff can meet with students on administrative issues or get help on getting redirected to academic staff, and that the new location would be similarly staffed as the current location. For the change of ownership, my parents, Young H. Park and Mrs. Suni S. Park, they are the current owners of ALU for 28 years, and they have agreed to a stock transfer with me. I am the Vice President and Dean of the School of Law. Just a minor correction. I haven't been a dean for over 10 years, but I'm actually approaching that. I'm definitely in the 5+ category, and very proud of the law school. The school was founded with the JD program first. And I do have that 14-year history as an ALU employee as well in different departments, and that really lends strength, I think, to my ownership in the future. The Park family stance and commitment to the overall institution remains unchanged. The major change really represents the passing down of ownership one generation down, and we have communicated that to DEAC, our accreditation agency. They have confirmed an exemption under 34 CFR 600.31E1 related to the family transfer. And we also have confirmation from the Bureau that once we have an effective date, they're willing to mirror DEAC's acknowledgement due to our status with BEPI as an institution approved by means of accreditation. I am happy to be here and to be available in case staff or the committee has any questions, but just wanted to give that higher level summary in case that real-time context is helpful. Thank you for your time.
And while we are together, I'd like to take a moment to thank Dean Park for her service on CS Bars and welcome her to her new role. She was recently elected as a commissioner to the DEAC. Thank you. Paul, are there any questions or would you like to open discussion? Oh, I see several.
Yeah, I had one. So Dean Park, is this basically the last contingency you need to resolve before you can actually execute the change of ownership? Sounds like the other agencies have approved.
Yes, our contingency as an express provision, it is checking with all necessary approvals. We have definitely the main one secured. We keep checking in case there are other ones, but we have gotten all the main ones secured. We would not put the stock transfer into effect until we are absolutely sure all regulatory entities that weigh into this are on board, and we have that written confirmation.
The reason I ask is because I think we were asking you to report its conclusion by your annual report this year. So do you anticipate any problem being able to close the deal before then?
I don't see an issue with that, but thank you for asking about that.
Yes, do you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. Congratulations, Dean Park.
Thank you.
Natalie, is it appropriate at this time to talk about the status of the school in terms of, I believe they were applying for accreditation?
Yes, so Dean Park, correct me if I'm wrong, but the school will undergo a registered inspection upon the completion of the stock transfer. And at that point, the school will determine when and whether it will proceed with an application for accreditation under the new rules fully adopted at the beginning of this year.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, so ALU has that pending application for accreditation. When we made this major changes notices, we noted that and reaching out to staff, and we are working with staff in terms of scheduling both a site inspection related to these major changes and our pending application, is my understanding. So thank you.
So what Natalie said suggested you're still haven't decided if you want to pursue it, but it sounds like you have. Is that correct?
Yes, actually, before this meeting, I didn't know that there had been a change in status. We have been pursuing our application this whole time. So there was never a pause for us in that. We talked to State Bar staff about an addendum site inspection visit and understood that that is something that is a pending logistic. It's been a very busy period. And also there are new fees to apply. So appreciate all the logistics on that. But yes, we have an application from December 2019, and we have been persistent, been supplying updates. There's nothing in written communication to us that has paused, or it was indicated that we had paused in our application. So thank you for that chance to clarify if that was something that needed clarification.
Any other questions? Someone want to make a motion to approve the major change? Can we have the motion up on the screen?
Could you say that again? Sorry, I hit us.
Oh, yeah, this is Alan. I will make the motion.
This is Robbie. I'll second.
Okay, do we need to see it, anyone? I guess nobody needs here, so Devin, want to take the roll?
Dr. Bolton,
Yes.
Robert Brody,
Yes.
Alex Chan,
Yes.
Jim Efting,
Yes.
Kareem Gangora, Larry Kaplan, Paul Kramer,
Yes.
Alex Lawrence, Esther Lynn, Justice Macy Walla, Bethany Peak,
Yes.
Ashley Silva Guzman, Judge Reyna,
Yes.
Vince Reyes,
Yes.
Alan Yokelson,
Yes.
Dr. Cow.
Yes.
With 10 yeses and 0 nos, the motion passes.
This is Kareem. I'm a yes too, Devin.
Oh, thank you. With 11 yeses and 0 nos, the motion passes.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, so the next item looks like is from Cody.
Yes.
That's a discussion of the 2023 California Accredited and Registered Unaccredited Law School Performance Report.
Yes, and thank you, Paul. That's a bit of a mouthful, but descriptive title. Let me give Natalie just a second. I think she's going to share the presentation, and we'll get started here.
Thanks, Cody. That's absolutely correct.
Thank you. Okay. Well, as Paul said, this is the discussion on the 2023 California Accredited and Registered Unaccredited Law School Performance Report. Before I jump into it, I do want to quickly give praise both to staff here in the Office of Admissions, but also our colleagues from the Mission Advancement team who aren't able to join us for the presentation today, but are critical collaborators in putting this report together.
Cody.
Can you make it full screen?
Yeah, just a quick moment, and I will bring it back up.
No problem. I can talk a little bit about the purpose of this report while we're getting the slides up. We have made, I think, a conscious effort across the State Bar and also in the Office of Admissions to try to bring more data forward to help drive decision-making. This report has been, since its first annual release last year, I think an important tool for the State Bar and for staff to achieve various goals. And I would just want to spotlight that on the State Bar's 2022-2027 strategic plan, we aim to protect the public by enhancing access to and inclusion in the legal system. And that includes both fostering diversity, equity, and inclusion, and embracing policy and system changes. We as an organization have identified that as part of these initiatives, we will develop performance metrics for California accredited and unaccredited schools, and we'll also report this key data to the committee and the board. And so we are coming back this year with an updated report to further advance those goals. So let's move to the next slide here. I just want to spotlight a few updates for this year's report that look different than last year's report. Now, if we can go to the next slide, and if not, I can also probably bring my screen up as well.
I'm happy to do that. What it's not doing is it's not letting me share to the desktop app, which would allow me to put it in the slideshow. Just a permissions thing.
Okay, it's large on my screen. Does this work for everyone? Okay, we'll keep going.
Okay.
Well, so as I mentioned, we first introduced the annual law school performance report last year, and that report reported on 2022 data. So this year's report includes last year's 2023 data, and we also expanded it to include some new analysis and measurements. I think it's our mission to try to provide more nuance and a complete understanding of the law school landscape, but we also gathered some interesting feedback from stakeholders that informed some of our expansion. The data sources for this report are the periodic compliance reports and annual compliance reports that all California accredited and unaccredited law schools provide us. And we've also synthesized that with other publicly available exam statistics and data that the State Bar generates internally. So as far as those new analysis, I just want to spotlight two that I think are very much critical to some of our core initiatives. So we have introduced an intersectional demographic analysis. So what that means is areas where we once reported data looking through a lens of just gender or just race, we have now introduced intersectional demographics so we can look at data specific to specific groups. So for example, Black women, white men, Native American men, we can look at this picture with more detail. And also, I mentioned that we gathered feedback from stakeholders based on a recommendation from law school deans and CS BARS members. We disaggregated some of this data related to unaccredited law schools based on their teaching modalities. So we have added some more context around the disparate impact or different performance at fixed facility, correspondence, and distance learning unaccredited law schools. Okay, so let's move forward. So I'm gonna just spotlight, I think, a few of the visualizations and data points that are most important or most interesting to the committee here. The agenda has an attachment, which is the full report. It's over 40 pages long. And there's a lot of great data that we can't cover today, but I encourage all members to look at it. But one of the distinctions we made in this year's report is trying to separate law school characteristics, which are important data points, but are meaningfully different from performance metrics and measurements. And so I want to start first with some of the law school characteristics. So the first visualization and data point we have is regarding JD enrollment by law school between 2012 and 2023. So we see between 2012 and 2019 that both CALS and unaccredited law schools saw a decline in enrollment, which is similar to a national trend that we saw across really all law school types with decreasing enrollment during that time. What we see in 2019 through 2020, though, is a large increase in CALS enrollment. And there's several reasons for that. One, there were two ABA-approved schools that transitioned to CAL status and 3 unaccredited law schools that became accredited. That last piece, the unaccredited schools becoming accredited, also accounts for some of the decrease in enrollment in unaccredited law schools that we see in 2020. But there's also a second factor here. The increase in CALS enrollment may also be attributed to the addition of distance learning as an accepted modality. That began in 2019, and allowing accredited programs to recruit more widely may explain some of the increase in enrollment for that type. And I should also note some of the decrease in unaccredited enrollment may be attributed to school closures. We saw between 2012 and 2023, 14 unaccredited law schools close, all but one of those being a voluntary closure. Let's go to our next figure here. Great. So we wanted to spotlight this figure because it's a great example of what this new intersectional demographic analysis can provide. So here we see JD enrollment by intersection of both race and gender at Cal's and unaccredited law school. And we can see that people of color make up a majority of the student population at both Cal's and unaccredited law schools. And more specifically, women of color make up the largest group of students at both of these school types. While this is a characteristic data point, and as I mentioned, not a performance metric, it is still an important measurement because it's important to consider the State Bar's goal of fostering diversity, access, and inclusion, and also recognizing the access-oriented mission that many Cal's and unaccredited law schools embrace. And lastly, in the characteristics category, we're bringing forward updated average total tuition and fees to complete a JD program by law school type. And again, here we're showing this data in a new disaggregated form where we can provide an additional layer of detail. So in 2023, we saw accredited law schools charge an average cost of $74,396 to complete a JD program. That's actually down from $75,000 in 2022. A majority of both Cal's and unaccredited law schools increased their total cost between last year's report, which was 2022 data, and this year's report, which is 2023 data. The unaccredited law schools charge an average cost of $44,945, which is up from roughly $33,000 in 2022. Again, we see this data disaggregated by modality again, and we see with that extra layer of detail that the lowest average cost is attributed to unaccredited correspondence law schools, and the largest being the fixed facility law schools, which is reasonable and I think suggests that lower cost schools are likely focusing on offering recorded or delivered instruction and less interaction with staff. Interestingly, and not shown in this visualization, but included in the full report, is that the range from the lowest to most expensive school in each type is actually similar. So Cal's total tuition and fees range from about $16,000 on the low end to about $101,000 at the high end. And for unaccredited schools, that range is about $13,000 to $97,000. Okay, so now turning to the performance measurements. And again, these are kind of the more metric-oriented data than the characteristic data points are.
Cody?
Yes.
Can I make an observation?
Sure.
Especially in the tuition area, but I suppose in other areas as well. Would it be possible to add, maybe in the next report, ABA equivalents?
Yes. The profile report this year's performance report does include perhaps a few references to ABA equivalents. The law school profile report, which we shared with the committee in January, compares all three law school types. This performance report, the annual performance report, is meant to focus in on those two types, Cal's and unaccredited, that the State Bar closely regulates. So we won't include a lot of ABA data here, but the law school profile report is probably a good reference point with relatively fresh data.
Okay, and at some point the Cals may need to be disaggregated into classroom and remote categories as well, right?
Yeah, so that's an interesting area. So the performance report in its totality tries to communicate. There is a table that tries to communicate the number of Cals in utilizing different modalities. The difference there is that the unaccredited law schools have to choose and operate principally using a single modality. So we have clear information about that. Cals can adopt a hybrid approach, and so the distinctions are less clear. But we can consider how to maybe provide some additional context there.
I mean, if it's too much work and doesn't add much, I guess it's probably not worth it, but I see.
Yeah, and Paul, I think it's also in the full report, but nearly all of the CALs now utilize some sort of hybrid model as well. So the if we disaggregate it the way we did for the unaccredited law schools, there wouldn't probably be much of a distinction from school to school the way that we see here. But thank you for that feedback. Okay, so moving to our first performance measurement. So the committee has spent a lot of time talking about attrition rates at various law schools, and both the law school performance reports and the law school profile report have focused in on attrition rates. I wanted to share with the committee this new addition to the 2024 report, which is second-year attrition rates. So in the previous report, we focused in on first-year attrition rate, and we have that in this report. We found that first-year attrition at CALs and unaccredited law schools was 46% and 48% respectively. And to your point, Paula, it's roughly about 8% for first-year law students at ABA-approved schools in California. But this new addition, the second-year attrition rate, gives us some additional information and new insights that I think. So what we're seeing here is that the gap between second-year attrition rates between CALs and unaccredited is much larger. So I mentioned first-year attrition rates were 46% and 48%. What we see here is second-year attrition at 18 and 36%. And that gap remains large even if you remove the first-year exam disqualification category, which are those students who do not pass the first-year law students exam and are dismissed. Elsewhere in the report, it also shows that people of color had higher second-year attrition than white students at both CALs and unaccredited schools. And people of color experience attrition twice as much as white students at unaccredited schools. The report shows that number's 47% compared to 22%. We've expanded this report to include second-year attrition. As I mentioned, it provides additional insights. I think this can help the committee and staff better understand student outcomes, their preparation for state bar exams by incorporating the first-year exam disqualification category. It also provides insights to help understand law school admissions and disqualification practices as we explore reviewing the rules and other initiatives. Okay, and just a few more performance measurements. I think probably one of the most important and the one that's discussed the most across the various committees and state bar work is California bar exam pass rates. In July 2023, we saw 22% of applicants from CALs pass the bar exam compared to 12% of those at unaccredited schools. Now you can see like in nearly all the years, Cal students had a higher July bar exam pass rate. However, 3 out of the 4 largest gaps between CALs and unaccredited July bar exam pass rates occurred in just the past 3 years. So we've seen that gap grow and kind of sustain itself since 2021. Interestingly, as well, as we think about how to use this data to assess policy, 4 of the 5 highest July bar exam pass rates for the CALs occurred after the minimum pass rate rule began being enforced in 2016. And so that may suggest that that requirement has had a positive impact. And let's move to the last performance measurement here. So there's been a lot of discussion about the total number of JD degrees. This is JD degrees awarded at each law school type in 2023. We included this in last year's performance report, and it was also in the law school profile report. What we see here is that the CALs have awarded 492 JD degrees in 2023 compared to 83 at the unaccredited law schools. Although I should point out that those totals are roughly proportional to the percentage of students that each type enrolls. Elsewhere in the report, we see that students of color receive nearly half of the JDs conferred by both CALs and unaccredited schools. And interestingly as well, because of this additional demographic data that we have in the performance report, we also show that JDs awarded at unaccredited law schools were conferred mostly to men, despite a majority of their enrolled students being women. So I've shown some visualizations. I've included some data points that are in the report but not shown here. So again, I encourage folks to go and dig deeper. I just want to finalize this presentation by just identifying, I think, some key takeaways. CALS and unaccredited law schools have diverse student populations. This performance report and the last report really pour that out. There are disparities in student outcomes for certain race and gender groups in both categories. As I mentioned, the characteristic data, while not being performance related, does communicate interesting trends and changes in the legal education landscape that I think are informative for staff and the committee. But focusing on the performance measurements, I think there are some valuable insights that I've shared and that are also communicated in the report that the committee and staff can use to develop new policies and to assess existing policies as well. So that's it. I'll take any questions or additional feedback if anyone has anything to share.
Are there any questions from the LA office for Cody at all? Are there any questions from the San Francisco office for Cody? And are there any questions from our remote members for Cody? It's a wonderful presentation.
Yeah, this is Robbie. I just want to say, Cody is, you're relatively new to the team, and that was really a very sobering, thoughtful presentation that raises lots of issues for us, and seeing it laid out that way was really helpful. So thanks very much.
Thank you. I have found it inspiring that the committee has been really receptive to the data that we've been sharing over the last few months and multiple reports. So we'll continue to bring more of this forward.
Thank you so much, Cody.
Yep.
I have a question. So when we get to the stage where we say, okay, now this is what we're going to do about XYZ problem.
Well, I mean, we're going to, I think right next, share an update regarding the unaccredited law school rules and our review process. Certainly the last year's law school performance report and the profile report have already played a role in I think, our thinking about possible improvements. This update to the performance report, I think, provides new information or at least shows some consistent trends so we can utilize this data immediately.
All right, well, Cody, take a deep breath and then go on to the next item.
Yeah, well, the next one should be relatively shorter, so I think we can dive right into that.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so the next item was an update on the review of the unaccredited law school rules. And this is, as discussed earlier, one of the priorities in the realm of educational standards that the committee has put on its work plan. Natalie, are you able to share this one as well, or would you like me to share this?
Yes, I can.
Thank you very much.
I'll be doing it in the same manner as we did the first one.
Thank you.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Not yet, it's loading up, so let's give it one more second.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, right. That's part of it. Good night. This is the poorest investment.
Okay, can you see it now?
Yep, okay.
Great.
All right, so today I'm going to provide an update on the review of the unaccredited law school rules. The The presentation should be relatively brief. I'm hoping to outline some of the work that staff and our committee liaisons, Paul Kramer and Alan Yokelson, have started in establishing both principles and goals to guide the review, what the drafting process for revisions will look like, and hopefully identify kind of clear next steps so the committee, Larry, to your point, understands how we'll move forward and what the process will look like. So I wanted to start by just making sense of the committee's engagement to date, because we've had various discussions that I think are related to the unaccredited law school rules, but we're just now kind of kicking off the rules revision. So I won't dig into it too much, but as I've already mentioned today, we are really trying to move forward with data-informed decisions. So we have brought to the committee both the profile of California law schools and now the law school performance report. We've shared now 2 iterations of that with the goal, I think, to aid the committee in making decisions that are data-driven. So the committee has, oh, sorry, if you could go right back, thank you. So the committee has established 2 goals related to unaccredited law schools, as I mentioned, and I'll just quickly touch on those just to lay out the work that's been done thus far. So on the front, related to mandatory accreditation and improving outcomes at unaccredited law school rules or unaccredited law schools, the committee reviewed the profile report. They had you all had a discussion in January, kind of assessing accredited law school requirements that have had a positive impact, and discussing mandatory accreditation in context with trends in the legal education landscape. Then in April of 2024, the committee directed staff to research 4 options to improve outcomes. So there's been somewhat substantial discussion on this front. We're now, staff and the committee liaisons, turning our attention to the unaccredited law school rules, and that's the update that I want to share today. So the staff and committee liaisons established a set of principles to guide the review and the potential revision of the unaccredited law school rules. Each one of these principles is rooted in either statute, rules, or the state bar's mission. So I want to start with the first principle, consumer protection and transparency, which is mandated by Business and Professions Code 6046. The goals here related to this principle include enhancing transparency and accountability and clarifying the language of the rules. And what we have listed below each goal are the various tasks that staff and the committee liaisons have identified thus far. So we have reviewing disclosures and notices to students, reviewing the non-compliance process, assessing the current acquiescence process, and exploring new policies around student complaints. Similarly, under the clarifying the language of the rules, we are endeavoring to review the description of law school categories, the major change definitions, assessing an appropriate phase-in period for those revisions that are adopted, and exploring opportunities to just clarify the language and ensure that language is in their appropriate place, whether it be in the rules or the guidelines. The second principle, being student success and preparation for licensure, is rooted in Rule of Court 9.30. And those goals related to this principle include improving admissions practices so that students that are enrolled are likely to complete a JD program and pass the bar exam, and teaching and administrative excellence. Under those goals, we have set forward the task of reviewing the transfer student rules, assessing the current use of pre-enrollment classes and schedules, and exploring one of the recommendations that the committee was interested in our April discussion, which was exploring a minimum cumulative pass rate for either the bar exam or the first-year law students exam for unaccredited law schools. Under that teaching and administrative excellence goal, we have reviewing library requirements, record retention requirements, and assessing both the current requirements for administrators and the use of the several exemptions and exceptions that are described in the rules and guidelines. And lastly, we have, you're hearing this a lot from me today, but the principle of evidence and data-driven decision-making. And this is really rooted in the State Bar's strategic goals. You know, as I discussed previously, we're utilizing the law school performance report, the law school profile report, but we're also thinking about data in a way with regard to including established metrics in the rules and guidelines and adopting evidence-based approaches. So with that in mind, under the goal of retention, increasing in retention of students and lowering attrition, we have exploring the proposal that the committee wanted further information on to strategically use standardized exams. And again, those evidence-based evaluations. We're also further exploring the proposal to track attrition data in a more robust or new ways. And under the goal of diversity in the population completing JD programs and passing the bar exam, we are looking to collect demographic data tailored to non-traditional students. This is a recommendation that came from law school deans and CS bars. So you can see that we're really thinking about how to collect the right data or how to use evidence in building recommendations moving forward. So that was kind of the pre-planning process of establishing an organizational framework. Staff and the committee liaisons have a working calendar now to complete an initial review of the rules and to draft an initial set of potential revisions throughout the months of June, July, and August. Looking ahead, I wanted to lay out for the committee what the next steps in a rules process looks like. So we would bring to the committee a draft of a new rule set, and the committee would discuss that initial set of revisions. We would then seek stakeholder feedback, both from our CS BARS members and also those at the Council of Access and Fairness, who have also established liaisons to support this process. Following that feedback, the committee would consider that feedback, of course, and then further refine the draft revisions, recommending a draft to the Board of Trustees to be circulated for public comment. After that public comment period, the committee would then review the public comment, make any necessary further revisions, and then finally recommend a final draft to the board to consider for adoption. I mentioned earlier during our discussion of the work plan, the Board of Trustees considers rules at only a few meetings each year. So we are currently aiming for the March 2025 board meeting, being the meeting where these rules can be considered by the board. So that would require some action by the committee later this year. And we touched upon it for a second, but I just wanted to underline, we have a new attorney in the Office of General Counsel, that's been recruited to help support these efforts. And so we will be working closely with that new counsel to provide enhanced support throughout the process. Okay, so that's our quick update. Yeah, there's.
So we have authority to regulate unaccredited law schools?
Yes, so it's actually in statute. It once was under the purview of the Bureau of Post-Secondary Education here in the state. I believe it was 2012 or so that was placed under the supervision of the committee.
I think it might have been.
So we have authority to regulate unaccredited. What's to stop somebody from saying, screw you, bar, I'm going to set up a law school. I don't need your accreditation. I don't need your approval. I don't need nothing.
They can't take the bar exam.
They can't take the bar exam.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure that instance.
That's it.
Yeah, I'm not sure that instance exists, but I imagine that some of the, like the gap that you're describing, I imagine is maybe filled in by some of the state's requirements for approval from the other post-secondary entity. to operate a school of any type. I'm not an expert on that, but that I imagine a school would probably need some level of
So
approval.
do we have the authority to shut down unaccredited?
Well, I mentioned earlier that for the most part, nearly all unaccredited law schools that have closed previously were voluntary. In December, the committee did take action to terminate and withdraw degree granting authority from People's College of Law. But that was only after like many years of compliance issues and probation.
How many unaccredited law schools are there?
Right now, I believe the performance report is 13 total.
So, I mean, if we decided, yeah, we don't like unaccredited law schools for all the reasons we've been talking about, as long as I've been here, could we do that? We could say, that's it, no more unaccredited law schools, either become a Cal or shut down. Can we do that?
Well, that would likely be the mandatory accreditation pathway that the committee has just briefly discussed in recently. It was a pursued, I think, more robustly by the committee maybe 5 or 10 years ago. So the committee could discuss that further. We've only, I think, just touched on that topic.
And Larry, as a point of procedure, that would also require a statutory change because the statute does originally create them. And also to your earlier point, that's why you often hear us refer to them as registered unaccredited schools. So it's clear that they have met the requirements that the committee has set forth in the unaccredited rules rather than simply opening. And by so doing, those students that graduate meeting the requirements are eligible to take the California bar exam.
And is it the case that thus far mandatory accreditation hasn't received much positive sentiment in the legislature?
I don't believe I've seen it introduced by the legislature, and that is the barometer that we have to determine. I do believe that the committee could put forth through the Board of Trustees a recommendation for them to consider in the future if that feels appropriate.
Yeah. Another way to get almost to the same place, Larry, might be to have relatively similar standards, perhaps differing mostly in, for instance, a minimum, an NPR equivalent would be lower perhaps for registered schools than accredited schools. But that would be one approach we could take in our new rules. We could be more specific about, what they have to achieve rather than just saying you can open and otherwise, it's kind of up to you how and what you want to do.
Are there other disciplines where there are the equivalent of an unaccredited school, like medicine or veterinary or accounting or you name it?
That I do not know. So it'd be interesting to see an analogy. I think at least the purpose for California's current structure has been a certain commitment to access and inclusion, and so that I guess maybe is particularly important in the legal profession, but I don't know if there's an analogy outside of the law schools. But I did want to point out, Natalie mentioned the statute. I think going back to the work plan, if you look at the priority around that includes mandatory accreditation, it also includes and/or these initiatives to improve outcomes. I think the thinking there is that at the end of the day, what matters most is that the outcomes for these students meet a certain standard. And so the committee doesn't necessarily need to maybe be hamstrung by a statutory change or anything like that. There's an opportunity maybe to improve outcomes through the rules revisions process, separate from mandatory accreditation. So they're similar, but they're distinct.
Would you say that most of the unaccredited law schools are for-profit?
That I do not know. Now, do we know the proportion of the unaccredited law schools that operate under nonprofit status and those that are for-profit?
I can double check the number. We've had some changes recently, and I can get back to you about that. And Larry, a little historical context may help. Prior to 2019, California is a very large state that hasn't changed since 2019, but prior to 2019, the accredited and ABA schools were required to teach in a fixed facility format, and only the unaccredited could offer the correspondence or distance type of format. And due to the size and the nature of California, it allowed for much more coverage at many more life stages and in many more geographies at that time that were not at all available to the CALs or to the ABA schools. So that's part of the reasoning. And one of the factors that kicked off this project, now that CALs have been able to offer a distance program starting in 2019. So 2020, the first classes began. They've graduated the first class. And the ABA is also looking at fully online programs, which can be achieved through a variance. It was a good time to begin to reevaluate the purpose and the opportunity in the unaccredited category.
I'll tell you what these unaccredited law schools remind me of. Those for-profit, technical institutes that, that have gotten a lot of negative press in the last couple of years. Of course, they're expensive and these kids go to them and they go into debt and then they don't get jobs when they get out. And it in some ways, you can talk about how it increases access and diversity and all that, but I don't know, access and diversity so that people can get ripped off, so that people can spend a fortune and go into debt and not be able to get a job afterwards because the school doesn't prepare them. I'm not sure we're really, protecting, the public interest by letting these places operate because they're not producing, lawyers.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I think one piece of context I do want to just provide in our either the January or April discussion with the committee, I think one of the things that we shared was just informally, I believe a majority of the unaccredited law schools that we had spoken to had communicated some interest in seeking accreditation in the future. So, my understanding of these schools is that they're operating, relatively in good faith and many of them are quite aspirational about where their institution can be in the future. So,
this is Michael. May I make a comment just to the committee in general? Actually, is that it's interesting that this is a very timely topic because there was a recent article that came out in the medical community by the Association of American Medical Colleges, and in their article that they are projecting a physician shortage of 86,000 physicians by 2036. So the question that I actually have maybe just in general for our committee is that, do we have a potential projection of shortages of attorneys in our legal community for the state or the nation? And the reason why I bring this up is that, and I want to piggyback on Larry's point, is that, Larry and everyone on the committee were very strong supporters of DEI, but at the same time, we want to make sure there's public protection for our students who are investing a significant amount of financial resources into their education. So, and I think this goes along where we're headed is potentially the mandatory accreditation of unaccredited schools. So, just in general, do we have an idea of what the potential shortage in the legal community will be? Because there's a shortage in the medical community.
The state bar. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. The state bar has done some work on what the legal landscape is looking like, legal deserts that exist in California. I think it's something that we can bring back at some point to for the committee to revisit and maybe even refresh that data, because I believe that was done about 3 or 4 years ago. But there's definitely evidence that that demonstrates that there are areas in California that have a shortage of attorneys. Like attorneys tend to concentrate in Northern and Southern California, in metropolitan areas. So, but it gets to your point, Dr. Cow, which is looking at where these gaps exist would be very beneficial.
I think in the prior slides about law school enrollment, we were having a decline, and then now the trend nationally is that law school enrollment, and as much as that is a predictor of eventual licensed attorneys, right? So law school enrollment had been going down over 10 years, and now the trend is for enrollment to go back up. How many of those people are going to become licensed in California? And then to Amy's point, to go to the attorney desert areas in California to work. So, and that's all part of the state bar, and, you know, looking at a helicopter view on access to justice and what we can do to encourage licensed attorneys to work in other parts of the state besides the LA area, San Francisco area. So it's a good question. I don't know, you know, it's hard to peg, and it doesn't sound like it's quite the same picture as the medical community, because maybe the forecaster there about how many people are going to med school, I'd say that would be a leading indicator for the AMA. But so it's hard to peg, but it's a good question.
It would also be good to gather data about why people maybe get a JD but then don't end up practicing law, whether it's by choice or simply because there aren't jobs available. Because it goes back to my old point that I think sometimes we assume that if we graduate more lawyers, more people will be served, but we forget that lawyers have to eat and clothe and house themselves and don't provide the money to actually compensate them to serve in these underserved communities.
Bethany, yes.
Yeah, so regarding the unaccredited law schools, you know, I also was formerly extremely against them. Similar thoughts, like, you know, they reminded me of those tech schools and things like that. But, you know, my experience when I was practicing in Bakersfield and I had the opportunity to do an inspection of one of the schools, I think it was an accredited school that we inspected while I was in Bakersfield. But, you know, we're here in our little like metro bubbles in LA and San Francisco, and we're really not in touch with how other people are living in the state. And I was able to be exposed to people that, you know, were in Bakersfield and Ridgecrest or some of these other communities that wanted to be lawyers, had zero desire to go to LA or to Riverside or to the Bay or whatever, but they still wanted to practice. And so a lot of these unaccredited and even some of our Cal schools were serving such a huge need, because these are the people that are going to go and work at the small family law firms or be the public defenders or whatever. And so in terms of like access, you know, I do now see an additional benefit that they are providing for these areas that aren't like our metros, for people that actually do need more medical services. And I don't know if there's a decline in the lawyers. I think so, just, you know, anecdotally. For, you know, the ABA schools, a lot of students that are going are not trying to practice law. They're going so that they can get a higher salary at their consultant job or at their tech firm or whatever. And so even to the extent that enrollment might be increasing, you know, I think we're going to see the reality is that most of those people are not providing legal services as we traditionally have appreciated them. It's more of like a career advancer move. And so I love the information that you've been providing, Cody. It's super useful to have that as we're thinking about, you know, these issues and the rules and stuff.
Thank you. And maybe to close the loop on that and to bring it all full circle, we did include in the law school performance report some employment status data for 2023. The way this works is that law schools will survey students, and those that respond will communicate if they have a job that requires a JD or that is advantaged by having a JD. And so you can see there that there are a good number of unaccredited law schools whose students report that their current employment requires having a JD. So, you know, that's only a small portion of the folks who attend because it's a voluntary survey, but it gives us some insight as far as what the intention are for these students to either seek licensure and to actually practice and be employed in the legal profession.
You know, I think the comments that the presentation generated are extremely well thought out, and it's led to a very robust discussion. I'm going to ask that we take a 5-minute break, if it's okay with everyone, because we have an 11 a.m. special set for us to come back in. So it looks like it's about 10:55 right now. So maybe we can regroup for our special set at 11 a.m. if that sounds okay with everyone. All right, sounds great. All right. Looks like we're starting to get people to fill back in. It's 11 a.m. So I will. Who should I turn it over to?
I'll introduce Dr.
Okay.
Quintanilla.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Are we ready?
Yes.
Are we on mute? Am I on mute?
No, you're live.
Okay, great.
You're live.
All right. Well, welcome. I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Victor Quintanilla. Dr. Quintanilla is currently serving as a law professor at Indiana University Moore School of Law, where he has served since 2019. He holds a JD from Georgetown University and a PhD from Indiana University in social psychology. And he's dedicated a significant portion of his career on the intersection of law and diversity and social justice. He's served as a principal investigator on the positive mindset intervention. And we're fortunate to have partnered with Dr. Quintanilla and his research team in 2019. Today, we're going to get an update from his team on an initiative that has provided benefits to an important subset of participating bar examinees. And with that, I will hand it over to Dr. Quintanilla, who I believe you also have a PowerPoint, correct?
That's right. It's such an honor to be here. Let me share the screen. Let's see if this will work. Okay, and then can you see my slide presentation? Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Amy. It is such an honor to be here with you today and to be presenting here with the Committee of Bar Examiners. I'm presenting on behalf of our research team at the Equity Accelerator, which was previously known as the Mindsets in Legal Education. I'm here actually with Dr. Kathy Emerson and also Shihik Walker, a project manager who's been helping to lift these initiatives. And on behalf of this team at the EA, I'm going to be presenting our results of our programs, our efforts and activities with the State Bar of California since we began our collaboration actually in 2018. So that's over the last 6 years. And we've made a lot of friends over the years with members of the State Bar. So none of this would have been possible without Leah, without Tara helping, and also without Amy, Audrey, Natalie, and many others, including some like Ron P., who were amazing and now earned their retirement. So we're going to be sharing our activity and efforts over 2 major programs to remote access to the profession. First, a productive mindset program, which we developed in partnership with the State Bar of California. And second, our research that provided an empirical base to inform the selection and shift of the new cut score, which has benefited all applicants and especially structurally disadvantaged group members preparing for the bar exam. So this work will really speak to a central question, which we at the EA have been engaged with for many years. And in short, can coupling psychologically informed, psychologically intuited programs for applicants and test makers and structural innovations and changes to the bar exam itself promote access, diversity, equity, and inclusion? Can we promote access to the legal profession? And I believe the research that I'll be sharing today shows that that is possible. So our efforts at the EA and this partnership reveals that it is possible to couple these programs that address psychological friction that California bar exam applicants experience with innovative adaptations and changes to the exam itself to enhance the impact and access while maintaining the rigor of the exam. So this research that I'll be presenting today would not have been possible without this amazing team of a community of scholars and researchers. Previously, we called ourselves Mindsets in Legal Education. We've since migrated to the Equity Accelerator. But first, I'd like to acknowledge with gratitude that the research was made possible with this truly amazing multidisciplinary team of co-PIs in law schools, sociology, education, psychology, with special thanks to Dr. Mary Murphy, Dr. Greg Walton, Dr. Sam Ehrman, Dr. Heidi Williams, and Dr. Michael Frisbee, among many others. All right, so I'm going to start off with the background today. the legal profession and the State Bar of California in particular strives for the bar to reflect the rich demographics of the state of California. This is especially so, as we know, given the many benefits that diversity, equity, and inclusion can have in the reality in which our institutions of justice operate. Indeed, being a member of the legal profession unlocks doors of power, privilege, and opportunity. And many of the elected representatives in our democracy are lawyers and, of course, judges and other high government officials as well. So diversity in the legal profession and the lack thereof can actually affect the reality with which our institutions operate. Yet, there's a stacked lack of diversity in the legal profession. This is from the State Bar of California's diversity report. While white attorneys account for nearly 68% of California's lawyers, people of color constitute 60% of California's population. So Latinx and Black attorneys are underrepresented among California's attorneys in comparison to the statewide population. And one reason of this is the bar exam, on which there are disparities year after year. While California has the second highest number of applicants seeking to join the legal profession each year, it actually has and had one of the lowest bar passage rates in the country. So before 2020 and our work together with the State Bar of California, historically, passage rates frequently fell below 50% on any given exam. And in 2020, our team was able to review data for over 85,000 applicants at the level of applicants, and we examined ultimate pass rates, that is including repeated attempts. And we saw large disparities in bar passage rates from Black relative to white, and we also saw substantial gaps for other racial and ethnic groups as well. So for example, 80.5% of white applicants eventually passed the bar exam, whereas only 53.1% of Black examinees eventually passed the bar exam during this period of time. In a second research project that we conducted, our team, in partnership with the State Bar of California, we gathered data from multiple cohorts of test takers and applicants, amounting to over 6,500 applicants from 2018 to 2021. We analyzed the distribution across these racial and ethnic groups and found that underlying bar exam scores varied between these racial and ethnic groups. That said, you'll see this kind of clustering in this band around 1350, around that neighborhood below. We then grouped applicants consistent with the literature into two groups: structurally disadvantaged applicants and structurally advantaged applicants. This is going to be important for later in the presentation, so I wanted to go ahead and unpack this for you. So we combined members of racial and ethnic minority groups and first generation and college students, white students, into structurally disadvantaged applicants. We then combined white students who are continuing generation and college students into a group of structurally advantaged applicants. So just to say that again, the structurally disadvantaged group included racial and ethnic minorities and first gen and college white students. The structurally advantaged group included white continuing gen students. We found, again, disparities between these structurally disadvantaged and structurally advantaged groups. For a significant period of time, over 40 years, from its inception until 2020, the cut score stood at 1440. This score, a crucial benchmark, effectively delineated between these structurally advantaged and disadvantaged test takers. So let's just be clear about how this cut score operates. All applicants with a score higher than the cut score pass the exam. All applicants lower than the cut score fail the exam. And it's important to note that the determination of that cut score is not a uniform process. Each state has the autonomy and the power to select its own cut score, leading to a diverse range of standards. California, for instance, had previously set the second highest cut score in the country. And in short, the selection of that cut score was a policy choice that had the effect of shaping underlying group disparities, as you can see on the continuous score measure. So there appear to be two ways of addressing the challenges that structurally disadvantaged test takers encounter on the bar exam and promoting access. First, push or bump the distribution of structurally disadvantaged test takers to the right with psychologically attuned interventions or other kinds of prep and study programs. And second, shifting the structural choice, adopting a new cut score, thereby increasing the pass rate itself for all applicants and especially for structurally disadvantaged applicants. So I'm going to be speaking about both of these in turn. Our work at the EA in partnership with the State Bar of California actually emphasized and traveled on both these paths. Okay, so let's begin first with the psychologically attuned program, the productive mindset program. In summer 2017, we engaged in a design process whereby we sought to learn specifically about the challenges unique to preparing for and taking this high-stakes standardized bar exam. We conducted focus groups and surveys with hundreds of bar exam test takers, and the common thread that we saw throughout all these surveys and focus groups is stress, worry. Our findings revealed a range of stressors that bar exam takers commonly face, including the profound worry and heightened arousal that studying for the bar exam can induce. The magnitude of the stress is such that it can actually impede the preparation process. We learned that this worry and arousal can be exacerbated when applicants encounter stressors common to the exam, including receiving negative feedback about mistakes made while studying and performance on practice exams while studying. Other common stressors included the way that family members tried to console applicants by communicating the belief that applicants had, oh, you have nothing to worry about, you're so smart. That could ramp up the stress as well. And we know that from the literature that stress often causes people to underperform in these kinds of high stakes settings. And second, that structurally disadvantaged group members contend with additional psychological friction and barriers, some of which include relating to the ability stereotypes tied to their social identities, which just increase the concerns, stress, and worry that they have when preparing for high stakes exams. So our research has shown that these kinds of psychologically attuned mindset programs and interventions can play a crucial role in reframing these common stressors and the accompanying arousal. So by doing so, they can enhance learning and performance of bar exam takers, offering a potential solution to these kinds of challenges that I've identified. With the aim of improving bar passage rates and reducing disparities, we partnered with the State Bar of California to create a novel productive mindset program that we administered to test takers just before they began studying for the July 2018 and July 2019 bar exams. In this randomized control trial, applicants read and listened to quotes from ostensible former test takers about their experiences preparing for the bar exam. The stories framed common stressors specific to the bar exam as normal, helpful, and conducive to one's valued goals. We loosely grouped the stories into three sections: stressors relating to the experiences of stress, growth or learning mindsets relating to failures and mistakes, and reappraisal directed toward the lack of motivation, using literature on purpose and utility to guide us there. Briefly, here's the sequence of modules for the intervention treatment condition. So first, applicants listened to written and voice recorded stories that communicated that the insight that stress and arousal is normal and can be facilitating. Second, there were stories that communicated that worry about failure and mistakes is also normal and changes over time, and that mistakes are areas to actually spotlight areas for learning and growth to dig deeper in. Third, stories about fluctuating motivation while studying and how to remind oneself about the purpose of one's efforts and actually the usefulness of studying for the bar exam itself. And then finally, the letter to a future test taker is transformative. We know that leaving a testament such as this for others can shape one's own beliefs. And then they completed dependent measures. I'm just going to do one of these just because it's going to take a little while, but I'm going to read this for you. So here's an example story that they listened to in audio. I'd done pretty well in law school, so I was shocked when I got my first practice test result. I mean, I wasn't expecting a perfect score, but I didn't expect to do that badly. So I started to worry I'd never be able to pass. From then on, each mistake felt like a sign that I wasn't cut out for this. So I avoided those areas instead of learning from the things that I was getting wrong. Then, one day over lunch, a friend who sat for the bar last year asked several of us if we'd recovered from our first practice exam yet. We looked around and it became clear from our faces that none of us had done well. But we had each kept it to ourselves because we didn't want to look bad. Our friend smiled and shook his head. Of course your first practice test sucked. Everyone struggles at first. That's why you're taking a class and studying. Then he said, let your mistakes show you where you need to go deeper with the material. That really resonated with me. And from then on out, I really tried to embrace the idea that success is about learning from your mistakes. Over time, I found myself learning more, doing better, and making progress. In fact, some of the subjects that I did the worst in early in the summer, like property, became some of my better ones by the end. That's an example story. There's also a stress mindset story here itself about the benefits of stress as creating energy for you, motivation. Okay, then here's the timeline for the intervention. Participants completed a recruitment survey through the State Bar's exam enrollment portal around March or April, and those who consented to the intervention received the link in May. So they completed the program right as they began preparing for the bar exam after graduation. Then they studied until July, they took the bar exam, and once the bar passage data was made publicly available around December, we attached it to the analysis so that we could examine the program. So what were the results of this RCT? So looking first, this is a sample of the, I won't get into too much detail of this, but this is the average treatment effect sample looking at the stress mindset measure. So just to start off here, you can see that when applicants, I'm focusing on structurally disadvantaged applicants for a large part of the conversation today. When they enrolled in the program itself, you can see that the scores in the treatment and control were relatively comparable. And you can see that those who were in the active control condition of the RCT, their beliefs about stress essentially didn't change from the beginning of registration all the way to when they began studying for the exam. But you can actually see that in the treatment condition, you can see that the structurally disadvantaged applicants who began in their enrollment period, their beliefs about stress and the benefits of stress actually statistically significantly changed and improved. And the question is that change in belief, the change in appraisal, how does that translate ultimately into people's preparations and bar exam scores? So here I'm presenting, again, the RCT results in the average treatment condition. And what we see here is we see a significant effect of the program on bar passage rates for structurally disadvantaged group members. So the predicted probability in the control condition was around 39.6%, where it was over 55% in the treatment conditions. So you can see that the RCT results for the treatment relative to active control actually improved predicted bar passage rates at this 1440 cutoff, which was operative in 2018 and 2019. Now, we saw a difference in the way the program operated for structurally disadvantaged and structurally advantaged test takers. And I think this analysis is quite revealing there. So you can actually see in this first path going from the intervention condition to beliefs about stress that everyone benefited from the reappraisals, from the changed and positive beliefs about stress as actually enhancing performance and providing energy and motivation over the summer to study. What you can then see is that it was really the structurally disadvantaged group members that received the benefit of these new beliefs on bar passage. And this has to do with the fact that we can again go to those that cut score and the distributions. Effectively, the bump in the distribution for structurally disadvantaged group members to the right translated to bar passage rates, whereas the bump for structurally advantaged group members to the right doesn't translate in the same way to bar passage rates, but it changes the quality of their experience when studying. So we see that all test takers benefited from the psychological messages in this program, but the psychological messages move the distribution of structurally disadvantaged test takers to the right, and hence we observe that impact on bar passage rates. And this makes sense knowing what we do know about where these groups of applicants abide adjacent to the cut score. That bump to the right for the distribution of structurally disadvantaged applicants translated to increased bar passage rates. Now, this analysis now looks at the effects of the program over time for structurally disadvantaged group members. You'll recall, perhaps, that in 2018 and 2019, we conducted this program as an RCT. In October 2020, we then essentially made the program available to everyone. So this analysis looks at those who completed the program relative to those who did not participate in the program. And what you can see is actually that year over year, there was a benefit for structurally disadvantaged applicants. And you can also see that we're essentially very close to the 50% threshold cutoff year in, year out. And the program seems to have made a difference for those who are essentially were right adjacent to that cut score, pushing them over the line. So now I'm going to turn to the second class of activities. This has to do with a structural shift and change that the EA and our team members participated in. This was providing an evidence base for the change in cut score that we ultimately prepared a report for with the Supreme Court of California. So just to recall, the prior cut score of 1440 distinguished between these two groups, structurally disadvantaged and structurally advantaged group members. And so addressing that inequity by selecting a new cut score might be another way of enhancing access for members of structurally disadvantaged groups. And so in 2020, this is precisely what we did, along with many others, both on the call and I'm sure listening to this call as well, this very Zoom call. We helped the State Bar of California and Supreme Court of California do by providing research in this evidence base to understand the impact of the cut score on issues of fairness. In fact, we presented much of the research that I've already shared with you today to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court found that, that evidence compelling and effectively shifted the cut score from 1440 to 1390. This change increased the percentage of all applicants who passed the bar exam, especially members of structurally disadvantaged group members who were being screened out by the higher cut score, again, the second highest cut score in the country at the time. That single change greatly increased the percentage of applicants who passed the exam, especially members of structurally disadvantaged groups who were being screened out. Okay, so now let's turn to the key findings here. The question is, what happens when one couples these kinds of psychologically attuned programs like the Productive Mindset Program and the kinds of structural innovations and changes that the EA has been working on with the State Bar of California for many years? Might this enhance access and equity and inclusion? I probably should have paused and said that all of what I'm sharing to you now is presented in a report that the members of the committee are going to receive. And it's basically being issued today. So you'll have access to all of this. Okay. Just to orient you on this graph, with bar passage on a vertical axis and the two cut scores on the x-axis, first, we see that the program itself actually improved bar passage rates for structurally disadvantaged group members by 8 percentage points. That's a 21.3% increase at the 1440 band. Then the question is, what about the structural shift? Well, our research revealed that actually increased the pass rate by 14.5 percentage points for members of structurally disadvantaged groups. That's a 37.7% increase in bar passage rates. Finally, combining these two together, we see that the Productive Mindset Program and the structural shift and changed increased bar passage rates for structurally disadvantaged group members by 22%, an increase of 57.1% in bar passage rates. That's just remarkable. So the example reveals that combining the effects of these kinds of partnerships, the EAs and the State Bars of California's programs and efforts have enhanced access to the legal profession for all groups, and especially for members of structurally disadvantaged groups. So now let's turn to some key implications. As I began this conversation, DEI poses a challenge for the legal profession, in part because the bar exam is a high-stakes standardized exam on which members of structurally disadvantaged groups leak out from the pipeline into the legal profession. These group-based disparities are produced by the structure, design, selections, standards being set, and also by psychological friction created by stressors and stereotyped encountered members of structurally disadvantaged groups. So psychologically attuned programs, such as the Productive Mindset program, can be designed to help address that kind of psychological friction. Here, the program improved bar passage rates for these group members, and moderated mediation analyses revealed that the intervention provided this benefit by changing beliefs about the nature of stress as being a hindering factor to a facilitating factor in these high-stakes settings. All applicants received the benefit of that change in beliefs that translated to benefits, especially for structurally disadvantaged group members, by bumping the score distribution to the right. Further, the structure of the exam was altered, and we saw that the selection of the new passing threshold lifts bar passage rates across for all groups, including members of structurally disadvantaged groups. In effect, the cut score moved the pass criterion to the left, greatly benefiting these group members. Finally, in sum, we began with a question: can combining, coupling, joining these kinds of programs and structural innovations and changes promote access and diversity? And I think that this presentation today shows, yes, actually powerfully, yes. We see that it is possible to couple these kinds of programs together to enhance access for all groups, including structurally disadvantaged groups. And it has been a sincere honor for the EA to partner with the State Bar of California over the last 6 years to engage in these kinds of programs and to enhance access to the legal profession. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for such a wonderful presentation. I'd like to go ahead and open it up to our committee members for questions or comments.
I have a question.
Yeah, yes. Go ahead.
Dr. Quintanilla. Dr. Quintanilla, so when you all administered the program, and I'm sorry I forgot the name of it, but the one that addresses stressors for the students, how were those facilitated? Were those done on a law school basis, or was it, like a statewide thing? Can you just give a little bit more detail on that?
Yes, I'm happy to. Actually, I think that I think it's important to share this because it really shows the kind of insight that members of the State Bar of California have, including all our partners there. So I think the success of the program really is that this was fielded through the registration process of the State Bar of California. So effectively, when applicants were applying for the State Bar of California, they had the choice. They could opt into the program if they wished to. They could opt in. And I think this really helps. And I didn't go into too much detail. There's a lot in this program itself, but one of them is, I think when an institution like the State Bar of California does so, it really communicates that the State Bar of California believes in the potential of its applicants. It really communicates something if it's coming from the State Bar. And in fact, the program itself began with a wonderful message from Leo Wilson, kind of encouraging the applicants as well. And I think all of it made a difference. All of it. It's different if it's coming specifically from a single law school. Well, that helps. I think that the statewide kind of print of it is even more powerful. And it also takes a great deal of work to organize. So I just really want to commend my partners at the State Bar. I know Amy has been working on this for many years. It's a big undertaking.
Hello, this is Robbie, Dr. Quintanilla. Thank you very much for an excellent presentation. Amy, I don't know if this goes even before your time, but do you remember we've done this already with a UCLA partnership? Bethany, do you remember that, where they had to say there was something that when you signed up to take the bar exam, you could opt in to a very thoughtful, which I thought, Amy, was that before your time as running the bar?
I started in 2017. This initiative started in 2018, but it sounds similar because that's exactly how applicants enroll is when you register for the bar exam, you can register for this opt-in. And even if you, at some point, if you don't register, we send reminders in the event that somebody changes their mind down the road. But
But in terms of the issue
Yeah,
that
do you
you're
remember that, Bethany?
referencing, I remember, but I don't remember like what the name of it or who was.
Yeah, they gave a presentation and it was exactly this: stress and group meetings and being able to share your thoughts. And I think it was targeted to all applicants for the bar.
Can I chime in for just one thing? So I know that our group actually, one of our collaborators, Sam Ehrman, was at USC for a number of years, and we did do a lot of work in USC and presentations. We actually did work as part of their. So I should say the EA. One of the things I really appreciate about the EA is we're doing this work throughout the pipeline. So we're doing this work within law schools, on the bar exam, and also with the LSAC as well. And so we did do a lot of work with USC a number of years ago. So it could well have been us that you're thinking of actually in the presentation, for what it's worth. Just wanted to mention that. Yeah.
I see some hands raised. Can I go to first Judge Reyna? And then I'll get to you, Vince.
Well, thank you, Dr. Quintanilla, for the report. It was really interesting and thought-provoking about how much progress has been made with the research you've done and these support that's offered. But I was just curious, how many folks did opt in? I'm not sure if you said it or not, but I think you said it was at 2018, 2019, and then you continued to do it for the last 6 years. I'm just curious, is it with the percentage of people that opted in, the sample size, and then do people, has it been consistent? Has it been going up? If you continue to do it, have people pass along the word that it's helpful, or I'm curious on that.
So I can give you a little bit of the kind of sample sizes that we have. We reached a total sample of 7,000 applicants. About 7,000 applicants, and that is starting in 2018 till to the present day. And even though that sounds like a lot of applicants, and it's a huge amount of applicants, I would say that I don't have the exact percentage of those relative to those who didn't, but you'll know that the State Bar of California has, if we had counted the full applicant pool from 2018, it would be much wider than that. I think that we're hitting about 15 to 20% in each exam administration, but even that accumulates to 7,000, just for what it's worth. Is that helpful? That gives you a sense of like the footprint?
Yeah, no, it does. I'm just kind of curious. I think someone else had brought this up, but I was just, it seems like so beneficial to have a program like this. Not only is it a good use to have it coming from the state bar, like you said, when you register, but, why not schools do it when they're, doing their bar prep and things for their students? Why it wouldn't be a regular course of action that's in conjunction with that. So I was just curious about the numbers.
And I'm really grateful for these comments. I will say that the EA is in current talks on ways of maybe on a couple of avenues, paths forward. One is we're first off reflecting on refinements and adaptations of the program in light of many of the new things we've learned with the LSAC, and ways of actually pairing the program itself, which, as you can see, is really directed at the psychological friction with actually study resources. And so providing, kind of pairing the study resources and feedback directly after taking questions with some of these messages in ways that kind of, I would say, like, take the program to another the next generation of enrichment in that way. I'm pretty excited about that. And I think that will probably draw even more once we pair it with study resources that may not be already available to applicants. I think there'll be a lot of applicants that want those, right? And then the other thing that I'll say is we're also working on on ways of trying to partner with groups like AccessLex and Helix and basically make this available in other jurisdictions as well. So just to give you a sense of where we see it growing, if that's helpful, Judge. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
Hey, Vince, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Can you hear me okay? I just want to make sure we don't have an echo. My question is this, and it comes from personal experience. I've had colleagues and people that I have hired in a former capacity who were people of color who fall into what your definition of structurally disadvantaged were, and were the first people in their families going to law school. And they had each taken the bar multiple times and failed each time. And so I'm not saying that they didn't fail on their own, but the problem for them is it was something that hung over them psychologically for as long as I knew them. And so this type of program that you presented would, may have been helpful to these types of individuals. So my question is, concretely, what are the modalities of the program? Are these like individual counseling, group sessions, some sort of correspondence? How do you actually reach people so that they understand these stressors as you define, and how do they overcome this, and then how is that tracked during the sessions that they're involved with?
Thank you so much for the question. I think I'd like to maybe I'll talk about two things here. One is it is the case that that the kind of the angst and that I don't know how we want to talk about this angst, shame, threats to self-esteem, relationships, fear about the future that can happen when people fail the bar exam is real. That is real. And there is a lot of meaning that's made there. And I could imagine that there could be programs in and of itself to help people pull themselves back up, basically, and kind of keep going, right? And lean back in for that. We haven't designed those yet, but this is an area of of future inquiry by the EA on the LSAT, for example, and I could imagine something similar in the future. Okay, so here I wanted to mention that there are actually a lot of modalities that are possible to help structurally disadvantaged applicants not just deal with the psychological friction, but the other kinds of obstacles they face. There's probably a wide menu. And you could imagine groups, you could imagine individuals, you could imagine institutions and so forth. And I want to say that I think all of it is valuable. Okay. There are a lot of different approaches, and that's because the reality that people experience are sometimes different and in different needs. This program is designed as a 1-hour program. And so essentially, the applicants will listen to the videos. They'll see that the State Bar supports it. They'll read about the prevalence of some of these challenges so they can kind of depersonalize it, see them as normal, and find ways of kind of coping and reframing. And then I think, again, just to say that one of the really powerful acts here is writing about how these themes could be helpful, not only to themselves, but also to others, really brings it home. And so that's what we're doing here. I mention that because, Vince, you've mentioned a number of other approaches, and I think they're all good, right? I'm just saying this program itself is kind of a targeted, scalable intervention that we did for 1 hour and made it available.
Yeah. No, it's a terrific step in the right direction, obviously. So I appreciate all the work you put into this over the years.
I see the hand in San Francisco still raised. Is that you, Paul?
Yeah, I'll take it off.
Paul, were you going to make a comment or a question?
No, I had it up for Vince. Are you not hearing me?
Could you speak a little louder?
He
Sorry, the
said he
volume.
didn't have a comment. I think it was raised
okay.
by Vince.
Okay, I'm sorry, Paul. I didn't hear you. Apologize. Are there any other questions or comments for our speaker? All right.
Can I mention one thing? Can I mention one thing?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I just wanted to mention in terms of the where I see the future of this kind of work and partnership with between the EA and the State Bar of California. So we've developed this program, and it's doing wonderful work. Again, I think that where we're headed in the future is enriching and building upon it, given the insights that we're learning from an earlier kind of gate at the LSAT, another standardized exam. And we're going to be taking those insights and pairing it so that the program actually can provide study resources and actually targeted feedback based on questions. And I think that that will draw even more people into the program because it's making those resources available. And I also wanted to say that I think our work is really helpful because we're continuing to collaborate and being able to do kind of pinpointed research projects and answer questions that the State Bar may have, maybe your committee may have, in providing evidence that could be useful to you when making decisions. And so that's the other thing that we're doing here. All right. Well, with that, thank you.
Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation, and CB, we really appreciate your time and your thorough research and presentation. Thank you, sir. All right, so that concludes the special set under operations and management. The tentative plan is for us to take lunch at noon to 12 to 12:30. So what I suggest is we go back to Ed Standards, and we had just finished from Cody's presentation the update on review of unaccredited law school rules. So I'd like to see, if it's okay with you, Natalie and Paul, if we can continue under Ed Standards and go ahead and move on to the next agenda item, action on major change, add the full-time JD division for Purdue Global Law School. Is that okay, Natalie and Paul?
Good here.
Sure, yes.
Perfect. I will turn it over back to you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just checking the audience for our representatives from Purdue Global because I know that they will want to participate, and I do see them. So the next request is a major change request from Purdue Global Law School, previously called Concord Law School. Last year, they rebranded to further leverage their connection with Purdue in Indiana, though Purdue Global University is a separate entity with separate funding. And that school became accredited in 2020. It did so with its part-time four-year program that had been operating previously. Several adjustments were made, not only to meet the accredited rules requirements, but also to continue to work to address retention and to offer flexibility for busy mid-career working professionals, which are generally the target market of this school. The school received a lot of requests and interest in a full-time program, and so they've put forward this request today. They have a unique schedule, which is a trimester schedule. So essentially they offer 3 semesters per year. They're a large school and they've grown quite a bit since they became accredited. So they offer all of their doctrinal law courses every semester. And as a result, the program is very flexible. They would like to offer a full-time program whose flagship can be completed in 2 2/3 years if people study continuously without a break, or they also would have the opportunity to take a break here or there as they need to do so. It's notable that they've added several pieces to make sure that this more intense study format will be successful. Not only a pre-JD program, flex program that will allow students to transition from a situation where they're not taking classes to taking classes potentially while working. Will limit the amount of working they can do during their time in the full-time program. And they've changed their curriculum, the timing of their grading, and increased the amount of formative assessments throughout the semester to improve mindset, perfect timing to talk about that, but also to help the students better assess how they are progressing. Based on these changes and the clear formatting of the program, the staff recommendation is to grant the school's request to begin offering a full-time program. And we do have from the school Deans Sean Jameson and Kelly Maurman. Paul, do you have any comments before we turn it over to the school for 5 minutes of public comment?
No, but thanks for asking.
Okay, thanks. So Devin, if you could recognize both Kelly Maurman and Sean Jameson, please.
Thank you so much. My name's Sean Jameson. I'm the Associate Dean of Academic Affairs at Purdue Global Law School. And with me is my colleague, Associate Dean of Experiential Learning at Purdue Global. Almost said Concord. So we're still working on that. And honestly, the presentation, Natalie, that you put forth was so thorough. I don't think at this point I have anything to add other than we just to reiterate, we have the capacity to do the program without any interruption or additional challenge for existing students. We've got the infrastructure in place, and we think it's going to be a great opportunity for the people who do happen to have the ability to go to school full time and not work full time. So I think it's a great opportunity for that particular group of students. And we're very happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
At this time, are there any questions from the committee? Okay, Sean, I don't see any. Oh, I do. Alex.
Hi, Dean. I got a question for you. I think Natalie earlier you just talked about how Purdue Global gets a separate set of funding, or the school versus the Purdue University have separate funding. I hope I didn't hear that incorrectly. If so, where does the school get the funding in terms of providing or reinforcing the current infrastructure or improving it to accommodate the full-time capacity?
Thank you for the question. Oh,
what I was referring to was access to tax dollars for Purdue and Indiana versus Purdue Global, and you may have further detail.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So we're not taxpayer funded. We're funding directly out of tuition and our own fundraising. But there's no significant additional cost for the full-time program. We're already offering all the classes, and we always offer all required classes every term. So the full-time students would be able to progress through the program at pace without any interruption, and it wouldn't actually have any additional cost to us. Just some administrative work on the back end, but not a significant cost at all.
And in terms of enrollment, how many students do you have, and how many students will you anticipate accommodating for the full-time program?
So I'm estimating here, and I apologize, I don't have the current enrollment figures, but approximately the equivalent of 600 students, and I don't anticipate more than a 10% increase, at least initially. It's enough people asked for the program, and enough people that did decide to go ahead with the full-time program, but would have preferred would have went ahead with the part-time program, would have preferred the full-time program, that we knew it was worth doing. But I can't really guarantee what the reaction will be, but I anticipate about 10%, so maybe 50 more students.
And final question, are students enrolled limited to students in California, or are we referring to students all over the place, meaning, there could be students in Indiana and there could be students in California?
Yeah, so under Department Ed rules, we do have to consider the pathway to licensure. And so primarily we would be able to recruit in California, Indiana, and then with some caveats, maybe a limited number of other states, like say that we're contiguous with California or Indiana, and that's kind of in flux, but the short answer would be mostly Indiana and California.
So in that sense, the curriculum would not be limited to California, but it would be what, dual state or multi-state in that sense?
Yeah, we focus on California. We would long-term have to consider the bar exam opportunities elsewhere as potentially as part of the curriculum. But like a lot of other law schools throughout the nation, it's kind of a nationwide viewpoint, but it biases somewhat towards wherever you sit, in our case in California.
Thank you, Dean. Appreciate your input.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions?
Okay, do you want to put up the proposed motion?
Certainly. The timing of the motion to have the program begin in January 2025 is the timing that was requested by the law school. And so they have already agreed to that timing should the committee make this motion.
This is Bethany. I'll make the motion.
This is Robbie. I'll second.
Did you get the maker, Devin?
I did, thank you.
Okay, and go ahead and take the roll.
Dr. Bolton?
Yes.
Robert Brody?
Yes.
Alex Chan?
Yes.
Jim Epting?
Yes.
Kareem Gongora? Larry Kaplan?
Yes.
Paul Kramer?
Yes.
Alex Lawrence? Esther Lynn?
Yes.
Justice Macy Walla? Bethany Peak?
Yes.
Ashley Silva Guzman? Judge Reyna?
Yes.
Vince Reyes?
Yes.
Alan Yokelson?
Yes.
Dr. Cow?
Yes.
With 12 yeses and 0 nos, the motion passes.
Thank you, Devin.
Thank you.
Dr. Cow and Paul, with your permission, with the plan to take lunch at 12, I would suggest that we skip over to the Glendale University College of Law closure item, which I believe will be relatively ministerial, so that it can be completed before lunch.
That sounds great, Natalie.
Okay, Paul, okay with you? I will take silence as consent. So Glendale University College of Law is an accredited law school operating a fixed facility program out of Glendale, California. It is also, much like Abraham Lincoln University, owned by a family. It was owned by a father who later transferred the school to his children, who have operated it for many years. The school has been operated fully in compliance. It has not at any time been out of compliance, but they have made the personal decision to close the law school. We informed the committee about this when we received notice last year. They are completing their teaching, and after this bar cycle, they plan to close fully September 1st. And this is an opportunity for the committee to exercise its duty of setting a closure date, which is also the date of the termination of their degree granting authority. The school has consented to September 1st. They did provide a teach out option for all of their students. Many students were able to graduate during this time period of the closure. Others were able to transfer. The school provided the students that were transferring with counseling and copies of free transcripts to assist with the process, and they adjusted the timing of their steps to maximize the transfer opportunities for the students. The September 1st deadline seems appropriate because the school has completed its teaching, but does remain available to the students during this bar exam cycle. And Dean Darren Greitzer will remain the permanent custodian of records, available to provide transcripts and also provide them to both their current students that transferred as well as the graduates. Are there any, and I don't believe we have a person attending today, but the school is not required to attend. Are there any questions?
Put up the motion.
Thank you.
This is Bethany. I'll make the motion.
And this is Robbie. I'll second the motion.
Okay, Devin.
Dr. Bolton,
Yes.
Robert Brody,
Yes.
Alex Chan,
Yes.
Jim Efting,
Yes.
Kareem Gangora, Larry Kaplan,
Yes.
Paul Kramer,
Yes.
Alex Lawrence, Esther Lynn, Justice Macy Walla, Bethany Peak,
Yes.
Ashley Silva Guzman, Judge Reyna,
Yes.
Vince Reyes,
Yes.
Alan Yokelson,
Yes.
Dr. Cow.
Yes.
With 11 yeses and 0 nos, the motion passes.
Thank you, Devin. So the plan would be for us to start lunch, and then we come back at 12:30. And then Audrey, I just want to double check, when we come back at 12:30, we'll be going into closed session.
Yes, please check for an email from me, a calendar invitation for closed session. At 12:30, we'll return directly into closed.
All right, sounds good. We'll see everyone in 12:30.
Hey, everyone.
Oh boy, what's wrong? So on mute.
We're still muted?
No. All right, looks like everyone is logging back on. We'll give it a few more minutes.
Are you going to take roll again when you start? Or no?
Yeah, it's just the committee of ours.
When we go back to close, though, do you have
you'll-
the details for that?
Yeah, and I can come back too, but when you leave, you'll enter in the meeting ID for the closed session that Audrey sent.
Oh, okay.
Press join.
Okay.
But if you need help, I can definitely come back.
Thanks, David.
Yeah.
Devin, while we are waiting, if you wouldn't mind, could you please briefly recognize the PCU registrar so we can confirm whether they will have the dean joining us as well? That would normally be the next item.
Natalie.
Devin just left us and is going back to her.
Oh, it's Devin who stepped away. Okay, I will send an email. Because I do see the registrar online, but I don't see the dean right now. That conversation actually probably served as sufficient notice for the registrar to check with the dean if he plans to attend, which is optional.
I'm waiting for, let's see, does it look like we have most of our members back at all? Amy, can we tell most of our members are back?
Let's see.
So,
Yeah, I think.
okay. All right. So it looks like most of us are back. Oh, go ahead.
But I'm wondering, do we need to do a roll call again?
We do not.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So we are back in open session. We have been on educational standards, and we're going to be finishing up on that. So I'm going to turn it back over to Natalie and Paul to finish the remainder, starting with the action on inspection report, Pacific Coast University School of Law. I'll turn it over to you, Natalie.
Thank you. Okay, so the next two items will both be inspection reports from law schools that were conducted recently. The first one is for Pacific Coast University School of Law, which is headquartered in Long Beach, California. It's a registered unaccredited distance law school. And you might be thinking, it's not what I most recently remember. The school has gone through a number of changes. It transitioned from accredited to unaccredited status in several years ago. Since then, it has changed its structure. It has slimmed down to a single track of JD students from two before, and it's converted from fixed facility to a distance profile. So this school was inspected recently, and I like to thank the team of David Kelly and Teresa Selensky for their help in doing that. The recommendations are attached, and they reflect a school that is in transition and that is experimenting with ways to be able to improve its bar passage results and also to improve it's just overall structure. For example, having more feedback to the professors, having more training to the professors, hopefully to result in improved state bar exam results. We also see something at this school that we've seen at others. That's it's something we hadn't seen before. During the pandemic, a number of schools took out loans that were available due to pandemic circumstances. And now, in some cases, those loans were forgiven. In other cases, it's time to begin paying back those loans, generally in July of this year. So we see a small school, 22 students, 7 passing the first year law students exam in the past several years, running at a $600,000 deficit, with those funds largely going to staff costs. That's not something we've seen before. And therefore, the recommendations, while many of them are generally ministerial, are focused on the bar pass result, but also achieving financial stability and clear communication to to students and prospective students as we go forward. Therefore, the staff recommendation is to renew the school's registration, but to re-inspect in another year based on the school's assertion that they currently have 2 years worth of funding at this significant deficit. And their projection to return to stability is based on a very large increase in student population, which does not match with what they've been seeing over the most recent years. Are there any questions just generally before we turn to the school for 5 minutes of public comment? And we'll have a discussion afterward, just functional. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to ask to recognize the registrar from Pacific Coast University, labeled as PCU registrar in the list.
Hi, Natalie. Thank you so much. I just wanted to note that Dean Desi's is on this call. I think his name might be Professor or maybe PCU Proctor, but he's here and he has his hand raised.
Okay, I believe it's Professor Gast, and I do see his hand raised. Thank you very much. I know that he expressed his intention to attend.
Thank you.
Ms. Leonard,
thank you, Dean
can you
Desi.
hear
We
me?
do see you. Yes, we can. Welcome.
I am so sorry. I think I got into some other PCU Zoom account. So my apologies to you and all for the folder all. Good afternoon. Yes, afternoon now. All members of the committee and members of the staff, thank you very much for the opportunity to say a few words here in advance of the committee's taking up of our periodic inspection report. First, though, in echoing Ms. Leonard's comments, I wanted to express my thanks to the 2 site visitors who appeared and conducted the site visit in late March, David Kelly and Teresa Selensky. I just wanted to say thank you to them. They were exceedingly well prepared and thorough, and acquitted themselves with the utmost professionalism throughout the course of the process, and that's most appreciated. As is reflected in in PCU's response to the periodic inspection report, we have accepted the contents of the report with a handful of objections, such a harsh word, responses to a few of the factual assertions made. We believe that some of those factual assertions were inaccurate. As I say, it was the utmost professionalism exhibited by the team. We just believe a few mistakes were made. Just for the record, for this proceeding, I'll just briefly go over that handful of objections, if you don't mind. I will make it brief. In the first instance, the inspection team noted that the law school, PCU, does not have a grade review committee. In fact, PCU does, and at all relevant times, has had a very fulsome and a very active grade review committee, as defined by guideline 2.9G and H, the purpose of which is to take up student challenges or questions to grade. We have those committee meetings regularly. That was set forth in our 5-year or periodic self-study report. It was also set forth in PCU's responses to the request for production of documents that was propounded on us during the run-up of the actual site visit. So I am a bit mystified by this inadvertent oversight. As a matter of fact, one of those grade review student petitions for a grade change was just held yesterday. The grade review committee called the academic council at PCU, which may be the source of the confusion. By my speculation, that could be the cause. That grade review committee is composed of adjunct faculty members, people with day jobs who regularly participate in the deliberation over student petitions for grade changes, inter alia, among other things, on a volunteer basis. It's done regularly and as a matter of course and subject to highly particularized and extensive policies and procedures set out in the PCU Student Information Handbook. Next, briefly, the report sets forth that, quote, there is no evidence the school implements its own policy, close quote, regarding faculty evaluation. In fact, we have a very regular and routine system of faculty evaluation. Again, that was set forth in PCU's periodic, the 5-year/periodic self-study report, as well as in our production of documents in the run-up to the site visit itself. So again, I'm a little at a loss to understand the basis for the assertion that the school does not conduct faculty evaluation, but in fact it does. Again, for the record. Next, the report
I believe we are at time. So therefore, Dean Desies, if you would move to conclude your remarks, would be appreciated.
So sorry. Thank you for Ms. Leonard. Thank you. Very briefly, the report sets forth that we are out of compliance with a requirement under the state bar guidelines/rules that we offer elective courses. I would respectfully submit that there exists no such requirement. As I've said in my response, if the committee believes we ought to offer electives and thereby cut down on the amount of time for instruction of the fundamentals of the study and practice of law, we will do that. But I think it's a whole nother thing to say we are out of compliance with a requirement that does not exist. And finally, thank you, Ms. Leonard. I'm mindful. This will be brief. With regard to our admissions policy, there was an omission of an explanation and entire discussion. Inadvertent, of course. It's assumed that the omission was inadvertent. And I think the admission of the discussion creates the false impression that PCU somehow has an open door admissions to any and all comers. That is most certainly not the case. That was fully explained during discussions had at the site visit inspection. And that said, I had a little note here, Ms. Leonard, that said I will now cede my remaining time to the chair. And thank the committee for its time. And if there be any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you for letting me exceed the allotted time. Most appreciated. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dean Desies. A moment of context may be helpful to the committee before you begin the discussion. Staff stands behind their recommendations for the following reasons that would apply to all inspections. The school has the burden of demonstrating compliance. The staff is very happy to see the school's updates provided without evidentiary support at this time, but in the self-study, in the inspection, in the response, other than the narrative summary repeated here, those things were not brought forth, and therefore staff did not have the opportunity to evaluate, or context and opinion may be appropriate. So for example, in the case of the grade review, the response from the dean was that such a committee did not exist and it would be created in the future and it was on the priority list, but perhaps reviewing the past records, it seemed that this was something that could fit the bill and may be appropriate going forward. Similarly, in the area of the evaluations, there has been a policy in place for some time, but for a school going through many, many changes and needing to know if the faculty were on board, they've only done several reviews per year, but we do believe that that will increase going forward. This was placed in the staff memorandum, and the school will have the opportunity, if the committee adopts the staff recommendation, to provide the necessary documentation in the future, and the school is manifesting an intent to comply with those areas. In the area of electives, the important issue is disclosure. Are students who attend the school aware of whether or not they will be able to take electives, and if so, in what areas those will be? This school has a lot of foundational courses, a lot of legal research and writing and analysis courses that it provides, and this may be in an attempt to improve outcome on state bar exams. But in so doing, it should advise students whether or not they will have the opportunity to take electives. So that's a little bit of context. And with that, I open it for any questions or discussion. And seeing none, is there interest to move the motion?
This is Robbie. I'll make the motion to adopt the staff recommendation.
And this is Bethany. I'll second the motion.
And Cody, for the record, would it be possible to put the motion up on the screen as voting is called?
Yes, sharing it right.
It will match the motion that is printed online for those that are viewing from the audience. Thank you. And Devin, when you are ready, we may take the roll.
Dr. Bolton?
Yes.
Robert Brody?
Yes.
Alex Chan?
Yes.
Jim Efting?
Yes.
Kareem Gangora? Larry Kaplan?
Yes.
Paul Kramer?
Yes.
Alex Lawrence? Esther Lynn? Justice Maciwala? Bethany Peak?
Yes.
Ashley Silva Guzman? Judge Reyna?
Yes.
Vince Reyes?
Yes.
Alan Yokelson?
Yes.
Dr. Cow?
Yes.
With 11 yeses and 0 nos, the motion passes.
Thank you, Devin, and thank you to Dean Desies and also to Registrar Natalie Badillo-Casas for joining us today. Our next item is also an inspection report, the inspection of Lincoln Law San Jose. This school is a registered unaccredited law school that teaches in a fixed facility program in its facility in San Jose, California. It previously was an accredited law school. It has been since January 2023, an unaccredited law school after a period of probation as an accredited law school. The school was inspected in February by the team of Heather Georgakis and Dr. Bolton from the committee. I'd like to thank Dr. Bolton for his participation. There were several follow-up meetings, one in particular including Dr. Bolton after the inspection of the school. The school has been undergoing a transition, and during that time, it has experienced staff changes, including 3 different deans during that period. But the school appears to have settled on the current staffing and continuing with a long-time registrar. There have been a number of issues in the administrative area, particularly in determining whether students have met the pre-legal requirements to begin their education or established exemption to the first-year law students examination. But the school has been extremely willing to work with the state bar as to those issues going forward, and has been responsive in adopting its policies that have been changed pretty relatively quickly since the inspection took place in February. Therefore, the inspection team and staff feel issues are very unlikely to reoccur. Much as we saw with the prior school, we do see a situation where the school is operating at a significant deficit. What is different here is that the school has operated for many, many years in its community and is well woven into the fabric of the community. Therefore, the school had significant financial concerns, but was able to work with donors in the community to secure significant support to be able to fund its operations for at least 2 years, and has significant leads beyond that. Therefore, the reinspection of the school is proposed not for 1 year, but rather for 2. So the recommendation is renewal of registration and reinspection in 2026. And I'd like to recognize Dean Jason Amezcua from Lincoln Law School San Jose to provide up to 5 minutes of public comment from himself or his team. Welcome, Dean Amezcua. He dropped off the list for a moment, but he's returned. So Devin, it should be possible to promote him now. Dean Amezcua?
I still see him in the attendee pool.
I do now. I see him back. And possibly Viviana can step in to assist with unmuting. Thank you. Welcome, Dean Amezcua.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
I'm so sorry. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee and staff. My name is Jason Amezcua, and I have the honor of serving as Dean at Lincoln Law School of San Jose. I would like to thank the consultants, Heather Giorgakis and committee member James Bolton, Dr. James Bolton, I'm sorry, and the staff for their hard work in the process and their the recommendation that they're providing to this committee. I was appointed dean to the dean position on August 12th in a very sudden transition and was immediately tasked with following through on Lincoln's unaccredited confirmation inspection. While it has been pointed out that I'm not a licensed attorney and that some may think that this is not the best look for Lincoln given its loss of recent accreditation due to lower past results, on August 12th, 2023, I probably would have agreed with you that it wasn't the best position for any of us to be in. But I was proud that the state bar rules allowed me to serve as the administrator at Lincoln by having achieved my JD at St. Louis University, and I was privileged to answer the call. I was also fortunate to have a great faculty support, some longtime faculty that provided counsel, stepped in as staff members, and really helped us get through the beginning and continuation of the year. And for my money, I have the best small staff and best, most resilient staff of a law school in California.